Heavy rain moving its way into parts of the far southwest later into Saturday. But as I say, where you catch the sunshine with highs of 18 degrees, it should still feel rather pleasant for the time of year. Heading into Sunday, a fairly unsettled day. Plenty of cloud across the country with some outbreaks of rain. This too could be heavy at times, particularly across the southwest, southern parts of Wales later into the day. And that generally leads us into an unsettled week next week. Generally temperatures turning more towards average. So make sure you enjoy the sunshine while it's here. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Is the Starmer government trying to reverse Brexit?
Boris Johnson says yes, as he warned the UK is at risk of losing control.
Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
Fears over the Falklands as an emboldened Argentina take advantage of Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands surrender.
Brits told to flee Beirut as the government organises more emergency evacuation flights as Israel's offensive intensifies.
Despite increasing crackdowns on smoking, why have rates in some boroughs in the UK increased?
And today marks the annual celebration of cinema's most iconic MI6 agent, Bond, James Bond. We celebrate the British icon.
Good morning. Manchester United co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe says any decision to sack the under-pressure Erik ten Hag is, in his words, not my call ahead of United's visit to Aston Villa tomorrow. And could the end be nigh for Gary Lineker on Match of the Day? More later.
There's a little bit of rain around today across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for most it's a fine day out there and generally the brighter day of the two this weekend. Join me later for a full forecast.
It has just gone 6 o'clock. Good morning, I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is GB News Breakfast.
Bond Day. Let's start off with a bit of that, should we? You're not a huge James Bond fan.
Well, no, I'd say I am a James Bond fan. Pierce Brosnan is Bond to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, can't imagine that.
Whereabouts in Ireland is he from?
Mayo.
It's Cavan, isn't it? Is that Mayo?
I don't know.
All right.
But I think it's County Mayo. Hang on.
I don't care. It's meant to be British,
Yeah,
English.
True.
There you go. Who knows?
I'm gonna find out.
You'll find out.
I'm Louth. Louth? Yeah, Navan. Oh, well done.
He's from Drogheda.
County Meath, not County Mayo.
Oh, right. Okay.
But there you
Drogheda.
are.
I've heard of Drogheda
Have
for some reason. But no, I have to say, it's very odd celebrating 007 Day when we haven't got 007 at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
Which we need.
What was the first one you saw?
The first one I saw, I don't know, it was be a Roger Moore one.
Mine was 87, Living Daylights, I think.
And who's been Bond to you?
Dalton.
Who's been the best Bond?
Probably Pierce Brosnan, actually.
OK, you agree with that one.
Yeah. He must have done about 4 or 5, I reckon.
I don't know. Oh, it was Roger Moore for me, but I have to say Daniel Craig was excellent.
Oh, I don't know about Daniel Craig.
Very good. I like
thought it was
the way
a bit moody.
They made them all more gritty, more full on.
I didn't like that.
No,
the storylines were different under him as well, weren't they?
But, you know, it's who did he get in now? I don't know. They keep changing their mind, don't they?
I think Idris Elba would be very good. I've said it from day one.
I think Idris would be very good. But he seems to rule himself out, so I just don't know anymore.
I can see you as a Bond, actually.
Oh, give over.
Oh, don't wind him up.
I mean, I look the part. I know.
You do look very smart.
But what I can't do is act. So, I mean, that would be... I mean, they tried not using an actor once.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And that didn't go down very well, did it? Poor Mr Lazenby.
Yeah.
Well, there was rumours it was going to be Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
Yes, but that disappeared.
Has it disappeared?
Yes.
Or is that still out there?
No, it's gone.
Oh, has it? OK.
So, anyway, there you go. If you
There we
know
are,
who the
we're
new
up to
Bond is
date.
going to be, who is your favourite Bond? I know it's like an old question, but it's quite an interesting one. gbnews.com/your say. Now, ahead of his new memoir, Unleashed, that we've heard an awful lot about, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been speaking, as you know, to Camilla Tominey, talking about his time in office and his views on politics.
Well, in the interview, he says it will be a disaster if Sir Keir Starmer tries to row back on Brexit. Let's take a listen.
I believe that we're great if we do things on our own. I think we're great I think that national independence is extremely important. And I think that point is proved beyond peradventure of a doubt in Unleashed.
Yes.
Because having secured full national independence, we were able to do things differently, such as the vaccine rollout, such as the AUKUS Pact, such as the taking a different stance from our European partners on Ukraine.
Do you think?
And I believe, and what worries me now is that the Starmer government is really determined to try to roll all this stuff back, and it will be a disaster. Unless we keep that proper control, we won't be able to do things like that again. So Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
What do you think Starmer and Reeves are trying to reverse Brexit?
So if we'd been a rules... This is the key point. Of course they are. Now, if we'd been a rules taker...
Yes.
At the end of 2020, 2021, we would not have been able to authorise AstraZeneca and Pfizer. No, but you keep interrupting this, because it's very, very important. And that was how, by March 2021, we had vaccinated 45% of the UK population.
The vaccine programme
compared to
will always
10%.
be part of your legacy.
Well, let's talk to former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and former Labour MP and indeed Minister of State for Europe, Dennis McShane. Good to see you both this morning. Dennis, we're being basically sneaked in the back door of the EU, says Boris Johnson.
Oh, it's wonderful. Now, can I make a confession, Steve? The first time in my life I think I broke the law was to sneak in and see the first James Bond, Dr. No, when I was under age. And for me, it began and ended with Sean Connery, because he was a great actor. The others were sort of faces, pretty faces, nice voices. He was a real actor, and it was a film that just left me absolutely transformed. Now,
You should have made sure, Dennis, it was the last time you broke the law, to be fair.
To be fair, I've been breaking the law in different countries. I was put in prison in Poland for breaking the communist law at the time. I was arrested in South Africa. Yeah, I'm a serial law breaker, let's be quite clear. But I actually obviously look at Boris Johnson. He's fit and he's lost a tiny bit of weight. And I think a nice white-haired James Bond should be the next one that we see, and he could star in it, couldn't he? Because, I mean, he's fantasising away already on your programme this morning with Camilla. I mean, just absolutely hilarious and stuff. That's
Why is he fantasising, Dennis?
Well, very simply, Rachel Reeves is plotting to take Britain back fully into the EU. Everybody who is interested in Europe in this country says that there's no difference, not an iota of difference between the position of Sir Keir Starmer, and obviously that includes Rachel Reeves, and his immediate predecessors. Liz Truss took us into the European political community. James Cleverly was the man who initiated the negotiations on the Diego Garcia, which both the US Defense Secretary and, of course, President Biden has praised, because it absolutely guarantees the presence of Britain and the United States in that sensitive part of the world. But because it was Mr. Cleverly who proposed it, of course, all his opponents for the leadership are cranking up the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph to say it's a great sellout. Now, vaccines, for heaven's sake, the AstraZeneca vaccine isn't sold anymore because it's not very good. It was thanks to the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine developed in Germany by two immigrants, don't mention immigrants in Britain at the moment, that really helped us enormously to combat. And the idea the rest of Europe was dying from COVID while St. Boris was running around saving us all with his vaccine. I mean, for heaven's sake, some stage, dear old Boris, I'm looking forward to reading his biography. It's 3 times longer than the New Testament, but he does see himself as a much more important figure than Jesus Christ, has just inventing stuff all the time.
OK, let's let Charlie get a word in. What do you reckon, Charlie?
Well, it's going to be an interesting read. I mean, I think, look, let's stick to the facts. The UK was the first nation to roll out its vaccine. That was something that I think is a credit to Boris Johnson and credit to the whole government. I don't think one individual can take full credit for it because it was a team effort. And we were, in the UK, the first to roll out that vaccine. And as Boris was saying in that clip to Camilla, able to vaccinate 45% of the population by March 2021, which was just a year after we'd first locked down. And we'd had 2 lockdowns since then. And that is, I think, because of the great innovation, the great work in this country. It was Oxford scientists that developed that vaccine, and by having us opted out of the European sort of regulations, we were able to deliver it on the ground. And there was obviously slightly more colourful pieces trailed in the Mail, I think, where there was an attempt to go and seize the vaccines that were being held up in hostage in the Netherlands at some stage. But everybody will remember also things like an RAF plane being stuck on the tarmac in Turkey to retrieve PPE. So it was a whole logistical effort to try and get the UK up off of its knees and back onto its feet on the back of 2 lockdowns, as I say, by then. So this is something that I think Boris will see as an absolute positive. Now, in terms of the EU, obviously, Boris has staked his whole legacy on getting Brexit done. That's what won him the 2019 general election. Get Brexit done, unite and level up the country. and he won a stonking majority. It's what won for the very first time a number of constituencies that the Conservatives hadn't held before in the Red Wall, seats that we have subsequently, or the Conservatives have subsequently lost and have to work incredibly hard to get back. Now, he'll also say, as he was saying also in an interview last night, that there's this coalition in politics, in UK politics, that has now disappeared. He was able to unite all wings of not just the Conservative Party, but identify issues all across the country which enabled people in the Red Wall, people who voted Brexit, to vote Conservative, some for the first time, and hold on to seats in the South West. Now, these are seats that have either gone to Labour or Reform have become second place parties in those constituencies, or we've lost seats to the Lib Dems. So it's the challenge to the new leader of the Conservative Party, whoever that is in a month's time, to rebuild that coalition.
It certainly is. Dennis, can I ask you about the Chagos Islands? Because you alluded to that a little bit earlier on. We also know Boris Johnson, in that interview with Camilla Tominey that comes out tomorrow, he has reacted to the news about the Chagos Islands. He's furious about it. What does Sir Keir Starmer want to do next? Does this set a dangerous precedent in terms of other British overseas territories such as Gibraltar and the Falklands? And I ask that because our political reporter Catherine Forster asked him what his intentions are with other territories yesterday, and he didn't give a straightforward answer. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Argentina now saying they want the Falklands back. Can you guarantee that under Labour no other overseas territories of Britain will be signed away?
Look, the single most important thing was ensuring that we had a secure base, the joint US in particular, UK base. Hugely important to the US, hugely important to us. We've now secured that, and that is why you saw such warm words from the US yesterday.
He doesn't answer the question, does he, Dennis?
Well, I didn't quite get what the question was. I mean, they're British. It's like saying, is Keir Starmer planning to give away Wales or Scotland or the 6 counties of Northern Ireland? I've been in Argentina with the British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and the gentleman from the Sun quite rightly asked the Argentinian president, are you going to reinvade and conquer the Falklands again? And the gentleman who was the president of Argentina at the time, Mr. De La Rua, said, no, don't be silly.
Yeah, yes, they're chomping at the bit now, Dennis.
No, they're not. They're not, because they know perfectly well they want to take on the whole world. I mean, it's a great song to sing in Buenos Aires, trust me, getting back the Falklands, but nobody seriously is thinking about it. Just as, as Charlie was saying, of course Boris Johnson won in 2019 thanks to Labour. We gifted him Jeremy Corbyn, and there wasn't a person in the country ready to put Jeremy Corbyn into 10 Downing Street. We changed our jockey, and look what happened.
Well, Keir Starmer was, but there we are.
The Johnson inheritance to 121 Tory MPs.
All right, just a couple of points to finish off with, Charlie. Firstly, I would say if I was living in the Falklands or Gibraltar, I wouldn't feel particularly comforted by what the PM said yesterday. But also, I've got to say, on the back of what Dennis just said, Labour gave Boris Johnson a victory in 2019. Yeah, very possibly. But the Conservatives gave Keir Starmer a victory in 2024.
Well, quite right, yes. You know, it was a disastrous campaign because of all the years of infighting since Boris left, and having a 49-day, whatever it was, Prime Minister, followed by Rishi, that just wasn't able to regain that ground. But I think you're absolutely right. Look, you know, Argentina will see that the UK is facing lots of difficulties on the international sort of front. It's fighting and supporting, you know, a European partner when it comes to the war in Ukraine. It is now, obviously, having to get involved diplomatically as much as it possibly can in the Middle East, with the war, obviously, between Israel and Gaza, and now with the involvement of Iran. We are constantly facing a threat from China, Iran, as I just mentioned, Russia and North Korea. The Argentinians will know all this. And so when we've just given away a strategic piece of our overseas territories, of course Argentina will be flexing its muscles even more. People in Gibraltar, as you say, Stephen, people in the Falklands will be, I think, incredibly worried by this announcement that just is seemingly out of the blue, and it just adds to the narrative about the Labour Party and the Labour government that there is no narrative, there's no strategy, it's all ad hoc. On the back of it seems to me what has been a terrible time for the Labour government dealing with freebies and Glasses Gate and all the rest of it, just to try and move the dial. There's been some sort of new announcement on the geopolitical international stage, and we've given away a strategic piece of land.
And on that note, Charlie, I've just been reading here, the Foreign Minister in Argentina, Diana Mondino, has welcomed a step taken by Sakir's government to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. She has promised concrete action to ensure, she says, that the Falklands are handed to Buenos Aires.
Well, there you go.
There you are.
Right. Well, on that note, we've got to leave it, gents. Thank you both very much indeed. I was just trying to log in to have a look at the views this morning, but I'm not logged in yet.
He's got a fancy new laptop.
Oh, I haven't logged into that bit.
I'll try over here.
OK.
Between us.
I bet some of you have got some things to say.
Yes, let us know what you think.
It's 16 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom today.
And more than 250 British nationals have left Lebanon on flights chartered by the UK government. That's according to the Foreign Office. David Lammy has urged any remaining UK citizens who want to leave to register immediately. The UK has chartered another flight to leave Beirut tomorrow amid ongoing tensions in the region. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden says he thinks Israel has not yet concluded how to respond to Iran after they fired almost 200 ballistic missiles towards Israel.
Downing Street insists its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius does not change the approach to other overseas territories, as we've been talking about. It comes as Argentina is now pledging to gain full sovereignty of the islands. However, the government insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering.
Lancashire Police Force has apologised after putting down a family's pet XL bully dog by mistake. In a statement, the police said it had given the family an unreserved apology for euthanising the seized dog, named Bruno, while the owners were in the process of applying for an exemption in order to keep him.
I mean, that's awful.
That's a horrendous story.
It's really, really bad. And, an apology, well, quite right, they've given an apology and all the rest of it, but what difference does that actually make?
I mean, an apology doesn't bring Bruno back.
No, that's awful.
Gosh.
Right, look, we're going to take a short break away from all the hectic news and politics to see what the weather's going to do for you today with Alex.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night, but elsewhere the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow, much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England, but only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy actually in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens, quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Before you kick off,
any of that.
hold on a minute, because Philip Sparrowhawk has been in touch. He says, Charlie Peters for James Bond, no contest. I can see it.
So can I, actually. I think that's actually quite a good idea.
I can see it. It's sort of a bit suave.
Very British.
A little bit posh. Little bit posh. He could carry it off,
He's a smooth operator. I think this could be a thing. Philip?
Ladies' man.
You're on the money. Yes.
Anyway. It could work. We shall suggest that to the Broccoli family for you.
Broccoli family?
Yes, Barbara Broccoli.
Who's Barbara Broccoli?
She's the woman who is in charge of all the Bond stuff.
Oh, is she? Well, there you go. Every day is a school day. gbnews.com/you'll say, let us know who your favourite Bond has been. Who would you like it to be now? Because we don't yet have one, do we?
No.
Charlie Peters in the running, clearly.
Could be. Right, still to come. Britain confirms more rescue flights as the conflict in Beirut intensifies. We'll tell you more in a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
I have seen a lot of stuff on X, Twitter, recently about Boris.
Oh, yeah.
Just various pictures
Positive?
of him. You can imagine just saying, well, at least he didn't take money for fancy clothes, because he always looks a bit of a mess.
Yeah,
but that's part of his style. But it's been quite funny. And sometimes I don't like a lot of the stuff that gets put online, but sometimes there's a good little bit of British wit.
Yes.
I did think that was quite funny.
Apparently, I heard anecdotally the other day from a hair and makeup artist in Kelly saying that she actually tried to smooth and straighten him out a little bit one morning and was trying to smooth down his hair.
Oh, yeah.
And the second she left, he ruffled it all up again.
Oh, yeah.
He wants that look.
He
likes to look that way.
I know Kelly, his hairdresser.
Oh, do you?
And she always tried to make it look really nice, and then as soon as she'd finished, he'd just run his fingers through and make it look a mess again.
Yeah, he likes it.
She tried her best, did Kelly.
Well, it is a trademark, isn't it? It's a trademark look. Apparently, in Ukraine, they're selling cakes still, and they've got kind of white icing on the top of these cupcakes, and they're called Boris Johnson cupcakes.
Really?
After his hair, yeah. Because they all love him in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because of his, passion and staunch defence of the country. So, yeah, they love him there. They sell cakes with his hair.
Well,
Anyway.
from one sort of war zone, well, absolutely a war zone, to another, and more than 250 British nationals have left Lebanon on flights chartered by the government, the UK government. The Foreign Office has made the claim, as David Lammy, who's now Foreign Secretary, urged any remaining UK citizens who want to leave to register immediately.
Well, the UK has chartered a flight to leave Lebanon tomorrow in order to support its citizens looking to leave the country. It says the Hamas armed wing leader was reportedly killed in an Israeli strike in the north of Lebanon. That's according to Hamas media.
Let's talk to Defence Editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who joins us now. Good to see you, Robert. I mean, in terms of getting British people out, I mean, do we know exactly how many are over there at the moment, how many want to leave, and just how possible it is going to be? The airport certainly is under fire.
Well, you've asked me questions in ascending or descending orders of difficulty. The answer is I'm not particularly clear. The figure was 7,000 to 9,000. And by the way, with those with claim to Canadian citizenship was put at just a few weeks ago at 45,000. Would you believe it? Now, the key point is access to the airport. I think that's going to get increasingly difficult in view of the latest bombing. And a lot of the bombing got quite close to the airport area because they still see that, the Israelis that is, as the stronghold of Hezbollah command. And they are still accusing both Hamas and Hezbollah of building their bunkers under residential blocks. And it's seen a lot of activity, and that will go on. And will build to a crescendo over the weekend as we come to the anniversary of the 7th of October attacks by Hamas last year.
Yeah, certainly will, Robert. People all around the world are waiting really with bated breath to see what Israel's revenge on Iran is going to be. There are options on the table, aren't there? What do you think we could expect to see next? Or can we even predict what Israel will do next?
No, I think, and that's where, purely in military terms, you could see why the Israelis are doing it the way they are. They're going to keep the world guessing, but above all, they want to keep the Iranians guessing. They want to disrupt them if they possibly can, because the attack earlier this week by 182 ballistic missiles was of a different order from the one we had on April the 13th, where it was between 250, all told about 300 missiles, drones and other things. But a lot of that was old stock. A lot of this was new stock. And I hasten to add that, by the way, if such an attack was launched on both the British base at Akrotiri, but heaven forfend that we ever saw such a thing in Europe, Britain seems to be completely unprepared to fend off this kind of attack now.
Yes, I mean that is a real concern. In terms though of what we might see, in the coming days or weeks, is Britain likely to play any sort of role? I mean, certainly defence of Israel is one thing, but we did take some action against the Houthis, didn't we? Could we take any sort of offensive role as well in this?
but not recently with the Houthi bases, which the Americans have been attacking. We have very little to do it with, because although Mr. Healy, the Defence Secretary, went to Cyprus for a photo op and said Britain took part in the operation against the attacks earlier this week by the ballistic missiles. There's very, very little that with the RAF Typhoons that they can do. What they want Britain to do is to really beef up the contribution to keeping the sea lanes open, because the Houthis, armed by Iran, of course, are using more sophisticated weapons and more sophisticated tactics, multiple attacks, including sea drones, commando attacks, and so forth. It is very, very complex. And I didn't answer your previous question. I'm going to do a Boris Johnson here, but I will answer it. And the choices are, broadly, does Israel strike at one of three ranges of targets? Military targets, launch sites for the missiles and aircraft, missiles particularly, if they can find them. Nuclear sites, of which 6 or 7 are unknown, but are known. Sorry, there are also unknown ones, and of the known ones, some are very, very deep dug into the earth, into mountains, are very difficult to get at. And finally, which Joe Biden was talking about yesterday, will they attack crucial oil ports or oil terminals? And if they do that, carries a huge risk. Russia will be very angry.
Okay, Robert, we've lost the sound, Robert. Yeah, apologies, we lost you there just for a moment, but appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, at 31 minutes past 6, you've still got plenty of time to grab an autumn cash boost, an incredible £36,000 in cash.
It's more than a boost, isn't it?
I mean, it's a nice lump sum, actually.
Lovely. Anyway, it's our biggest cash prize of the year so far. It could all be yours. Here's how.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills Bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home, my mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, you know, like degrees.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
6:36. Quickly, I think Margaret. Morning, Margaret.
Morning, Margaret.
Hasn't had enough sleep today. Get another hour, Margaret, because she says James Bond. You either choose between Jason Statham, which I can see, or Ryland Clark.
No.
It'd be like a Carry On. I mean, it would be like Carry On. It's like saying Kenneth Williams should have been James Bond.
Yeah, no.
Come on, Margaret, what are you thinking?
They've got to be suave, haven't they?
Suave, sophisticated, ladies' men.
Someone has suggested our very own Aidan McGee to be the next
They
Bond.
did, it was a joke.
Oh, joking.
It was a joke.
Don't get all excited.
You never know. You never know. Maybe you could dive in all your gear and save Manchester United.
Someone has to. That's a fantastic link, which has just been said by our...
It's all right, don't give away the secrets.
Sorry. But listen, he's been given the opportunity, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who took over football operations at Manchester United back in February, to back his manager. Now, what do you want to hear when you're embattled? You've won 3 games out of 10. You've got a trip to Aston Villa tomorrow. You lost at home to Tottenham last Sunday. You've blown a 2-0 lead against Porto in the Europa League earlier in the week. You need to be able to hear some backing from the owner of the club, don't you? But anyway, he was in Barcelona because we'll bring it onto this later on when we talk about the America's Cup of sailing. And he was just said, what's going to happen with Erik ten Hag? He probably wasn't expecting the question, given that he's at a different event. But when you're the owner of Manchester United, all bets are off, as your reaction just sort of alluded to just then. So he said, I'll give you the full quote. He said, I don't want to answer that question. He said, I like Erik. I think he's a great coach. But at the end of the day, it's not my call. Now, look, I'm sorry, but if you buy a quarter of the club for, what was it, £2 billion or whatever it was, or £2.5 billion, and you're in charge of football operations, nothing could be more football-related than who is the manager of the biggest football club in the world. As I say, he's been given the opportunity to back him, and he's completely sidestepped it. And I wonder if you're Erik ten Hag this morning, and it's everywhere this morning, it's all over the sports pages, it's all over the internet, all over social media. Heaven knows what you'd be thinking. Don't forget, he signed an extension to his contract earlier in the summer. Everyone knows that pretty much the reason he stayed is because they couldn't find anyone else to do the job.
Why don't they sack him? He's not going to leave. He needs to be sacked to get his big payout.
Yes, he does. Yeah, exactly. He will get a decent payout as well because he's still officially got a year, 9 months left on his contract, but that'll amount to quite a few £1 million. But you know what? They actually backed him in the summer. Because they went cap in hand to him because they didn't have anybody else. They said, well, this guy's got to do the job. So at least if he's in situ, they've got to actually back him with some signings. So they brought in a few players. They spent a few quid. There were players that he preferred, players he'd worked with previously in Holland, Xerxes and De Ligt, for example, from his previous club, Ajax. They also changed the backroom staff as well, Ellie. That's quite crucial because you bring all these people to work around you. It does impact on the infrastructure of the club. There have been suggestions that there'll be improvements at the stadium and at the training ground, which I'm sure he will have been involved in as well. So to rip it up this early is very difficult. But as I say, 3 wins out of 10. They look so poor. Did you see any of the Spurs game? The Spurs at the Man United game?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Spurs didn't have to work that hard for that win. And in the days when you went to Old Trafford and played like that, played fairly casually in probably third gear and win comfortably 3-0. Says a lot. It does indeed. So they play Aston Villa tomorrow. Aston Villa are flying. They beat Bayern Munich earlier in the week, and that's going to be an extremely tough match for them. And Jim Ratcliffe is going to be there, which is
talking of him and Ineos.
Yeah,
Ineos Britannia. I mean, he was in Barcelona. We have got into the America's Cup for the first time in 60 years.
Yeah, no. If you're Jim Ratcliffe, I mean, that's really something to celebrate, especially when you own the team, and then he gets these questions about this other part of his portfolio, which isn't going particularly well. But yeah, outstanding achievement. First time in 60 years, as you say. They're going to be up against New Zealand on the 12th of October. So that's
not long to go, is it?
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but it's very, very hard to do. Lots of Brits in the past have thrown millions and millions of pounds at trying to win this, and if they could get this one over the line, that's an outstanding achievement. We'll go into more detail on it later on.
That would be fantastic. Aidan, we're out of time. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you later on.
James Bond lines.
Oh, yes, you better have. You never know what might happen.
Do stay with us. We're going through the papers in just a few minutes.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. The time is 6:44. We're going to take a look at some of the front pages. No, we're not actually, are we? Because the autocue's not working.
Well, no, we can do. We can do. Let's have a look at The Guardian, should we? It reports that Scotland Yard is facing claims that corrupt police officers accepted payments to assist in the alleged mistreatment of staff by Mohammed Al-Fayed.
The Telegraph leads with a proposed £2 billion cut in foreign aid by Rachel Reeves, potentially triggering a rebellion within the Cabinet.
Times has the Labour Party proposing a significant reform to workplace rights, aiming to provide greater protections for employees from their first day of work.
The Daily Mail reports that Argentina is poised to renew its claim on the Falklands following the UK's decision to return the Chagos Islands.
And the Eye has the UK issuing a warning to Israel regarding a potential attack on Iranian nuclear sites, saying such action would escalate into a wider conflict. Well done, Sherlock Holmes, on that one.
Well, let's delve into the papers now, shall we, with Kevin Schofield and Stephanie Tecci. Really good to see you both this morning. Welcome. Kevin, let's start with the Mail, shall we? Hands off our Falklands.
Oh. Yeah, so inevitably after it was announced that the UK is going to give up control of the Chagos Islands and hand it over to Mauritius. The Argentinians have spied an opportunity here. Obviously, they want the Falklands back. We fought a war over it in 1982 when the Argentinians invaded, and now they have said that they've welcomed Keir Starmer's what's described by the Mail as humiliating handover of the Chagos Islands, and saying that they welcome this step in the right direction and the end to outdated practices, i.e. Britain controlling far-off territories. So they are saying, again, I mean, they haven't...
But they're going to say it, aren't they?
Exactly, their position hasn't changed. They want the last Malvinas, as they call it, the Falkland Islands. They want the Falkland Islands back. I've been at the Falkland Islands, actually, a good few years ago now when I worked for The Sun, and I can tell you the people of the Falklands definitely don't want to be Argentinian.
Yeah, and that's
the most British place
like Gibraltar,
in your life. I mean,
Gibraltar's the same. It's so unbelievably British.
Unbelievable
it really
place,
is.
Actually. So they had a referendum, I think, about 12 years ago.
2013.
And it was something like 90% want to remain British. So, you know, I don't think there's any prospect of that changing. However, you know, we've seen the interview, the press conference yesterday with Keir Starmer. He was asked a very direct question by the reporter from The Sun, and he dodged it. And, you know, he's a smart guy. He knows how to answer a question, and he purposefully... I don't know why, because he's just set this hair running.
I mean, that's what I don't understand. But it's the same with our Catherine asking him a question on that, and he, again, just didn't actually answer.
But I don't think this is going to be a conversation that Keir Starmer can kind of sweep underneath the carpet. I think, you know, even though citizens might be happy to be part of a British territory, you still have people in the government, the Argentinian government, who do believe that they should get back to being an Argentinian place. So I think it was, you know, it was always, this conversation was always going to come up, and I think it actually will gather steam with a lot of places around the world about wanting to have that sovereignty back.
I mean, the Argentinians are talking tough on this. The Foreign Minister there, Diana Mondino, has promised concrete action to ensure that the Falklands come back to Buenos Aires.
I mean, concrete action, does that mean they're going to try and invade again? I don't know whether they've got capability to do that. I mean, that's what they literally need to do that.
But it's like being in opposition, isn't it? They can say what they like because they're not actually going to do anything about it.
Absolutely, and it will play very well, I'm sure, with an Argentinian audience. But, you know, they tried it once before and it didn't work, so I'd be very surprised if they were to try it again.
The Times, Steph, says we're going to get new workplace rights, which means there'll be protections in place from day one.
Yeah, good news for employees, because I do believe if your employees are happy, then you get better productivity. Labour are saying this is going to be a once-in-a-generation overhaul of greater security for workers' rights. On Thursday, they're going to be publishing the Employment Rights Bill, and what's going to happen, there's going to be more rights for women in maternity pay, so rather than waiting 6 months before they can access maternity, they can get it from straight away.
That's a nightmare.
Why?
That's really bad news for business, because you could have got the potential. You can't ask anyone if they're pregnant when you're employing them. And if someone, for example, wasn't showing or had, you know, they had to work out a notice period for their last employer, you could literally turn up ready to pop on day one and say, right, I'm going on maternity leave.
But some of these things cannot be helped. And I think, you know, for women in particular, they do want to know that they've got that support when it comes to maternity sick pay. Usually people have to wait 4 days until they can get sick pay. Now you can get from the first day you're sick. We're living in a cost of living crisis, and I think employers do need to be supporting their employees in much better ways to get the productivity they need.
But also they can claim unfair dismissal. Well, actually, you need to be able to get rid of people pretty early on. If they're not if it turns out they're not the right fit, you need to be able to get rid of them.
Well, yeah, if that's the case, then you're not going to win an unfair dismissal claim, though, are you? Well, rubbish, you get rid of you then.
But you never know, though. People threaten it, and it's enough to put you off. I think this is really bad news.
I think there needs to be a happy balance. I don't think things can stay the way that it is. I think there needs to be some kind of point where businesses are happy and also employees are happy, because clearly the system's not working at the moment.
Well, the devil will be in the detail. I know that Labour have been wooing business and have been in opposition for a very long time, because business tends to be instinctively wary of a Labour government, probably for these reasons. However, Labour have been in discussions with business for a very long time. So you've got to imagine when they bring the measures forward that they will have business squared off on the measures involved. But we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I can see them probably will be a bit of pushback from business, but whether or not it's overstated remains to be seen.
Kevin, let's stay with you, shall we? And this is the front page of the Express. 1 in 4 losing fuel help when they're over 80.
Yeah, I mean, so the Express are banging the drum on this one. It's an Express campaign on the winter fuel payment. They've found another new line here. Fresh analysis, as the headline says, 1 in 4. I mean, that's a lot of people over 80 are going to lose 300 quid off their winter fuel payments. We already know that it's starting to get colder already. People are already putting their heating on. I suppose if you're an old person on a fixed income...
the price of fuel went up on the 1st
and it also went up on the 1st of October. You know, so this is clearly a massive concern for older people. I mean, I still think that this was politically a massive own goal by Labour. For the amount of money it's going to save, a little over £1 billion. I mean, really, I just can't... And the political pain that they've brought upon themselves for this is just defies belief, really. But I don't think they're going to... change their mind. We've got the budget coming at the end of October. Maybe Rachel Reeves will pull something out to help pensioners in some way, but really I don't see them overturning.
Why was there this big announcement about this, though? Why was it made such a big deal by the Labour government if they could have just waited to the budget in October, snuck it in a set of policies, dressed it up with a big giveaway, or we're going to, you know, increase pensions, or whatever they were going to do? There's other ways they could have presented this.
No, I totally. That's a very good question, and a lot of Labour people are asking the same question. They just don't understand why they made this
like a flagship policy.
They were only in the door 5 minutes, and this was one of the first things that they announced. It wasn't in the manifesto, obviously, because it's such a vote loser, and now it's dogged them for weeks and weeks and weeks, and will continue to dog them because obviously pensioners are very unhappy.
Just got time, Stephanie, to have a look at the Sun front page. I'm afraid I'm extremely cynical. Ulrika Johnson has said, she must need a few headlines, that she was drinking herself into oblivion, real drink problem, but she's now been sober
for 4 months.
For 121 days. Now, if you actually have got a drink problem, you don't tell anyone after 4 months.
Not at all.
You're far from out the woods.
And you're right, Stephen. I think it does make a mockery of people who actually do have serious issues with drink. But they've tied it in with Sober October, when many people are giving up the booze. And I think with all these kind of addictions, it's always good to get a face of a celebrity to talk about their problem. But the thing is, you know, 4 months, most people who have alcohol problems, they don't talk about their situation years after, where they feel that they're at a place where actually they've actually controlled their bottle, their habit with drinking. But still, it was still interesting to read her story, because she says that she was a high-functioning alcoholic, and there are people like that where they can binge drink but they can still function. So I do feel like that side of people who battle with drink should be hearing their stories.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I've always felt a bit sorry for Ulrika. She's never seemed like a very happy... No, genuinely.
You've got no sympathy for her this month.
I think she had a hard time. I think
some people just chase
in her private life. I think it's sad. It's a very. I mean, it's good if she's been able to stay sober for 4 months, and hopefully she'll continue.
Yeah, we wish her luck with that.
Yeah, she's never seemed a terribly.
No.
Right. On that note, we're out of time. See you both a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland, and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles, and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But Here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still, much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night. But elsewhere, the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow. Much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England, but only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy actually in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens. Quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Is the Starmer government trying to reverse Brexit?
Boris Johnson says yes, as he warns the UK is at risk of losing control.
Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
Fears over the Falklands as an emboldened Argentina take advantage of Keir Starmer's Chagos Island surrender.
Brits are told to flee Beirut as the government organises more emergency evacuation flights as Israel's offensive intensifies.
Despite increasing crackdowns on smoking over the years, why have rates in some boroughs in the UK actually increased?
And today marks the annual celebration of cinema's most iconic MI6 agent, Bond, James Bond, as we celebrate the British icon.
Good morning. The BBC issue a statement over the future of Match of the Day host Gary Lineker in response to a leaked email seen by the Mail Online, which suggested the presenter's time fronting the flagship show could be at an end. We'll have more later.
There's a little bit of rain around today across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for most it's a fine day out there and generally the brighter day of the two this weekend. Join me later for a full forecast.
Just gone 7 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
I'm struggling a little bit this morning.
Are you?
I had flu jabs and things yesterday, and I am feeling the results today.
I'm sorry.
It always happens, doesn't it? But it's worth it. It's worth it not to get flu in the winter.
I can hear it kicking
Can
in.
you?
I have ordered you a tea.
Oh, it's arrived.
It's arrived.
Oh, well done. Yeah, get that down you. That'll fix everything. This cheer you up. Got you all going as Bond this morning.
Bond.
Yeah.
Excellent. James Bond days.
We've been asking who would make the best Bond, because we don't actually know who the next Bond is going to be.
No.
A few of you have been emailing in. One suggestion was our very own Charlie Peters as James Bond. We thought that was quite a good suggestion, so there we are. There we have it.
Yeah.
He does suit it.
Actually, that works.
Yeah.
It's not the best Photoshop I've ever seen, but it does work. There he is. What about our very own Aidan McGee? Somebody else suggested. Actually,
Aidan, that actually works, I think.
It does work.
It's not a great Photoshop, is it?
Did you get that photo in?
No, they chose that.
Oh, they chose that, did they?
I dread to think what we have for the next one.
Mr. Stephen Dixon. Oh! God, that's out of the archives, that.
That's a very old, fat picture. I mean, why did someone pick that picture?
Does
I look
Bond
like 10-ton Tessie on that picture.
Has Bond
You need to
worn
have a word
glasses,
with the
though?
producers.
Fat Bond.
Can you remember him?
We've had the blonde Bond, now it's Fat Bond.
Can you remember him wearing glasses as well? Bond?
No.
I don't think that counts.
Stephen could be the first.
The first fat, glassed, spectacled Bond.
Oh,
according
dear.
to that. Can we recut that with a nice picture?
I think somebody might have an issue with you out there.
Remotely possible.
Like the oldest picture we could find.
Someone hates me. Tom Hardy, says John.
Oh, Tom
Great
Hardy
actor.
would... I think he's a bit rough around the edges.
I think he's a bit rough around the edges.
Kathy agrees with me, saying Idris Elba would be my top choice, and she also agrees that her favourite Bond was Piers Brosnan. But I also agree with Stephen that Daniel Craig brought us a grittier and sexier Bond.
Yeah, it was very... I like the direction they took it. Jane says, and of course lots of people will agree with Jane, the best and only Bond is Sean Connery. He had the looks and the voice. And Sean Connery was phenomenal.
I think that's lots of people's favourites.
Absolutely phenomenal.
For sure. Can I go back to Kathy for a second? Because she's just said that she's living in County Mayo, near the west coast of Ireland. I know it very well. It's where my family's from. And she says, I love GB News, especially your weekend breakfast shows.
Well, of course, they're the best, frankly.
So a shout-out to the west coast of Ireland.
We try not to be biased, but if you want to watch a breakfast show, then obviously...
We are the best choice.
Thursday to Sunday is the way to do it. Deck says Ellie for Miss Moneypenny, especially in that outfit and that hair.
It is giving Miss Moneypenny this morning,
Vibes,
isn't it?
yeah.
I was saying, would I prefer to be a Bond girl, but we said no because they end up dead.
They are, yeah.
Do they always?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
As a rule of thumb.
To be fair, they have quite a good time before they die, but they do end up dead.
Yeah, way to go.
No, so I think Miss Moneypenny might be the way, because then you're the boss, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I quite like that.
Paul and Jane are two other people who haven't had enough sleep today, who said, both myself and my wife think Stephen would make a great James Bond. Failing that, Jacob Rees-Mogg would take up the man. You're all mad.
No.
You are all mad, frankly.
They need to be, smooth operators. I think, Stephen, if we got a good photo of you, I agree that's not the best.
No, I mean, that's an awful picture.
I think let's see if we can find a nice suave picture of Stephen. And we'll try again.
I'm holding up my...
You need to supply the picture.
My pistol in between eating Mars bars on that picture. It's
no, you're
an
being
awful
really
shot.
mean to yourself. You don't look fat.
It's awful. I do on that picture. It's dreadful.
Don't say that. It's 7:05 in the morning,
Yes,
Charlie.
I think we need to apologise for that one.
Yeah,
but
we
anyway,
do.
Let's talk Boris Johnson. Sharika's ahead of releasing his new memoir. The former Prime Minister has spoken to Camilla Tominey to talk about Showbiz, his time in office and his views on politics.
Well, in the interview, he's also asked about his meetings with the late Queen and whether she thought he was a difficult Prime Minister to work with. Let's take a listen.
Did you have a bit of a testy relationship with King Charles? Did you get on with the Queen and Prince Philip a bit better than...
No, I think look, I mean, what's certainly fair to say is that I used to see the Queen every week.
Yes.
And that was one of the great, great joys of the job, because it was kind of free psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And there was no confession so appalling that, she'd heard it all before, right?
Would you say she had her work cut out with you compared to other Prime Ministers?
I don't know. You'd have to... Well, I don't know. She was always... Look, she was... What I can say is she was always very supportive and kindly and full of of really good advice. And so she wouldn't, you know, I sort of have a fair idea of what she's thought about lots of things, but she wouldn't really reveal her hand much, but she would
You
she would nudge
indicate
you.
that she's a bit Brexity.
No, I wouldn't go into her political views, and that wouldn't be right.
Well, Boris Johnson also gave his view on the recent revelation that he attempted to stop Meghan Markle and Prince Harry from fleeing the UK. Here's what he had to say about that.
Prince Harry and Meghan, in my view, they came to an event we did for female education. They were brilliant. And she was particularly good and articulate and on it and on the detail.
So you got on quite well with Meghan?
Yeah. I got on well with both of them. And I also worked with Harry when he did his Invictus Games for disabled veterans in the Olympic Park. And so in a sort of, you know, fit of pomposity, I thought, you know, this national asset is leaving our country. I think he's a force on the whole, could be on the whole a force for good. I'm going to try and discourage him. And so I had a pathetic attempt at that. It didn't work.
No.
And there you go. I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit.
Well, let's talk to former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Morning to you. Do you know what? It's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. He is an entertainer. I just don't know how seriously I take any of it. I've got to be honest.
Well, I think he's... look, he'll go down as a Prime Minister that obviously had to deal with a very, very difficult time, COVID. He did things that I think were sort of against his better instincts, so locking down. He's a libertarian. He had to lock down the country 2 or 3 times. He now says that was a mistake. And I think a lot of people would agree, actually. The first lockdown, absolutely fine, the right thing to do. But the subsequent ones, I think pressure from within, he's now obviously regretting that. The vaccine rollout will be his legacy. But he does have a way with words. We miss, I think, him for his optimism and for his ability to put a good spin on something to make us feel good about ourselves, but we don't necessarily miss the chaos, I think, that came with it. So it'll be an interesting read. 738 pages, I think he was...
it's a big book, yes.
Last night. So how much of that is sort of reflective of him and his own sort of self-analysis of what went wrong? How much of the blame for the chaos that ensued within his government and the Conservative Party that lies at his door? We'll have to wait and see just how reflective he is on that. But, it was a very, very difficult time. And, whether he was equipped to be Prime Minister for that particular moment in time, having won that huge majority on the back of tapping into what the country was feeling, which was getting Brexit done, we'll just have to wait and see.
Sorry, just on that, and I'm quite intrigued, because he's busy saying we're all being dragged back into the EU. If he was saying these things, whether you believe him or not, if he was saying these things before the election, that might have had an impact, but he kept stum.
Well, he was able in 2019, I'm just getting my dates in a row, to say to the country, look, we haven't dealt with Brexit. And there was 2 years of a parliament under Theresa May that just couldn't decide what kind of Brexit...
Why didn't he do it in the last election? He could have helped Rishi Sunak out, couldn't he?
Well, I think you'd have to ask Rishi and whether he thought that Boris might be a help or hindrance and how much he wanted him on the campaign. And to be fair, Boris did come out at the end of the campaign, as he did for Theresa back in the day, to try and gee up the troops. But I think it's very difficult once you've been a former Prime Minister to then try and help your predecessor, when perhaps one of the big things that Boris was keen about, which was levelling up, and he created a whole new department about levelling up, and Rishi, I think, didn't take that agenda as seriously as Boris did. It could be quite difficult.
But lots of people would say, especially in the Red Wall, that Boris failed. There was no levelling up.
Well, I think COVID, which is what Boris continues to sort of, fall back on, which is one of the things that sort of shut down the economy. That's one of the things that I think he will always say, sort of cut off that sort of growth, cut off that sort of, idea and ambition to really sort of level up the country. I mean, Boris is never short of ideas and infrastructure projects that he wanted, whether it was Boris Island or whether it was, obviously, we had the brilliant Boris Bikes in London. But I think he had lots of ideas right across the country. Even a bridge linking, I think, Scotland and Northern Ireland at one point.
How much of it ever came off? I mean, that's part of the thing. He comes up with some sort of weird and wonderful ideas, But then it must be people turning around saying, Prime Minister, we can't implement it, it's not practical, or we can't afford it, or all three.
Well, and one of those was HS2, obviously. He was, I think, a bit of an advocate for that because he wanted to make sure that you're getting that regional inequality and that linking up between the north and the south. And it ended up, obviously, being too costly and overrun, and that's why Rishi ditched it.
Do you miss him, Charlie? Do you think we'll see him back in politics?
Well, there was a brilliant end of the interview last night, and whether Camilla asks him the same question, we'll see with bated breath tomorrow morning. I'll be tuned in. Where he was asked, is this, the last of Boris Johnson? Is this book the sort of the final chapter, as it were, in his sort of political history? And he ducked the question again by sort of saying he's always described the chances of that coming back as equal as a reincarnated olive or something like that. So you never say never with Boris. There will always be, I think, a role for Boris in politics, whether it's on the international stage, whether it's continuing to write columns, whether it's still being part of the discussion. But I do think he has probably, like most of the country, has sensed and will be wanting to seize upon the failures of this Labour government, which seems to have had a few bumps and run-ins already, just 3 months in. And I think he'll be wanting to be part of the conversation to see what happens next maybe at the next election to steer this country in a direction that he would arguably want to see it go in.
That's interesting, though, because is that not self-serving? And it's back to my other point. If he wanted the Conservatives to be in government, he could have given them a lot more and a much better chance to still be in government. Or would he rather they were out and then he's got a chance to take back the reins?
Well, he might have.
Be honest.
Well, absolutely. There's always more you can do. I think everybody would accept that. I mean, I think during the last campaign, there's more that any Conservative could have done. But I think he might have read the writing on the wall and thought, well, because of obviously the chaotic nature in which he left and the chaos that sort of ensued, I think the Conservative Party was always going to lose the next election. He made that calculation and therefore thought it would be a waste of political capital maybe to be over-enthusiastic about it.
And to be fair to him, he probably saw Rishi Sunak as a backstabber, didn't he? He didn't particularly want to come out in support of someone that he would see threw him out.
Yeah, and they must have had, political differences. So, Boris obviously was the architect and leader of Brexit, and, whatever you think about the Windsor Framework, for example, which Rishi sort of negotiated, and, it could have been could have appeared like, we were getting back closer to the EU, something that Boris might have opposed. Scrapping HS2, as I say, something that Boris was an advocate of. Not having the same gusto for levelling up, which Boris had, which Rishi obviously didn't. I think all of those things showed that they were on perhaps slightly different paths politically, and therefore Boris might not have been able to support Rishi as much as Rishi might have wanted towards the end of the election, when obviously the wheels had come off that Conservative Party campaign.
OK, Charlie, good to see you.
Thank
you very much indeed.
Now at 14 minutes past 7, let's take a look at some other stories coming to the newsroom this morning.
Well, Downing Street insists its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius does not change the approach to other overseas territories. It comes as Argentina is now pledging to gain full sovereignty of the Falklands. However, the government insists its commitment is unwavering.
Lancashire Police Force has apologised after putting down a family's pet XL bully dog by mistake. In a statement, the police said they'd given the family an unreserved apology for euthanising the seized dog, named Bruno, while the owners were in the process of applying for an exemption to keep him.
From just 13 runners to millions, parkrun marking its 20th anniversary today. The movement, which began with just a handful of people in London, now spans 2,500 locations in 23 countries. The founder, who started it all to aid his recovery from injury, says parkrun has grown into a force for physical and mental health.
Do you parkrun?
No. No, I don't know anyone who parkruns. I've never seen a parkrun.
No,
You're all crackers.
I also think you're crackers. You couldn't pay me to get up at 9 a.m. Well, I'm here already at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, but
and we do pay you.
And you do pay me, so that's why I'm here. But I wouldn't be paid to run around a park at 9 o'clock in the morning. Charlie Rowley, do you parkrun?
No, I don't park run.
Oh,
but
there's a surprise.
But I do occasionally like to pop down to the gym and do my bit of exercise. But I have run before.
Oh, that's good.
I do like running, but I wouldn't necessarily.
Just away from the police, Charlie.
I'm not Dennis McShane. He seems to be running forevermore from the police.
He does all over the world, it would seem. Yeah.
Well, we know he's got a checkered past.
Wow.
So there you go. Right, let's have a look at the weather very quickly. Here's Alex.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night, but elsewhere the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow, much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England, but only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy actually in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens, quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now some good news this morning. You've still got plenty of time to grab £36,000 worth of cash in our autumn cash boost. As we were saying earlier, it's more of a...
It's more than a boost.
It's a lump sum.
It's a great lump of fabulous lolly, which I'd very much like to get my hands on. Anyway, I'm not allowed, but you are. If you want to take part, here's how.
They're still watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, indeed.
Oh, yeah, it'd be lovely, that. Someone here this morning was saying I might have won the Euro Millions last night, but of course they haven't. Because they would have heard about it. I can't remember who it was.
And they wouldn't be here. They would have walked out, probably, because they're now
Pollard.
a millionaire.
It was Pollard who's directing us today, yeah.
Was it Cooper?
No, it's Pollard.
Oh.
So there you go. So he hasn't won, but it's you stand a much better chance of winning your £36, don't you?
Well, and he can't win
Better
either,
odds.
so that's going to be wasted.
Yeah, so we're stuck on the old-fashioned lottery where you never win. Anyway, worth a shot.
Do stay with us. Still to come, Robert Fox is going to give an update on the British effort to get their citizens out of Beirut. That's next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Princess of Wales has begun planning her annual Christmas Carol concert, marking her return to royal duties after chemotherapy. Princess Catherine held a meeting at Windsor Castle to discuss the events, which will be broadcast this Christmas as she continues to ease back into public engagements. A wonderful story, and I'm joined now by the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, fantastic stuff. This will be just the kind of royal Christmas message we really, really want, and fantastic news about Catherine's return. Tell us more about this amazing event.
Well, you're absolutely right, because Together Christmas, which is her carol concert, it's been an annual since 2021. It's marvellous news because she's moving back toward royal duties, that's absolutely clear. And the question is, of course, when will we see her next? And, you know, we're all looking forward perhaps to seeing her on Remembrance Day. I'm sure that that is now a definite possibility at the Cenotaph, and subsequently, very definitely, for one of the highlights of the year at Westminster Abbey, which is her concert.
When can we expect any details, for example, of the choice of carols? Because, I mean, that's what people really want to know. What are the details? When are they going to come out?
Well, I don't know when they will be released. Remember, even now, these meetings and these details, they're being very, very carefully managed. What we've got is very, very good news, but there's no doubt, as she made clear in her recent video message, there is still some way to go, and being cancer-free is her priority, obviously. So let's hope, and also let's hope we might see her at the Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance. Just a thought.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home? Talking about? Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy. Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
It's 7:25. Now, more than 250 British nationals have left Lebanon on flights chartered by the UK government. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is urging any remaining UK citizens there who want to leave to register immediately.
Well, the UK has chartered another flight to leave Lebanon tomorrow in order to support people looking to leave the country. It says a Hamas armed wing leader was reportedly killed in an Israeli strike in the north of Lebanon. That's according to Hamas media. Well, earlier we spoke to the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox.
Is access to the airport. I think that's going to get increasingly difficult in view of the latest bombing. And a lot of the bombing got quite close to the airport area because they still see that, the Israelis that is, as the stronghold of Hezbollah command. And they are still accusing both Hamas and Hezbollah of building their bunkers under residential blocks. And it's seen a lot of activity, and that will go on and will build to a crescendo over the weekend as we come to the anniversary of the 7th of October attacks by Hamas last year. You can see why the Israelis are doing it the way they are. They're going to keep the world guessing, but above all, they want to keep the Iranians guessing. They want to disrupt them if they possibly can, because the attack earlier this week by 182 ballistic missiles was of a different order from the one we had on April the 13th, where it was between 250, all told about 300 missiles, drones and other things. But a lot of that was old stock. A lot of this was new stock. And I hasten to add that, by the way, if such an attack was launched on both the British base at Akrotiri, but heaven forfend that we ever saw such a thing in Europe, Britain seems to be completely unprepared to fend off this kind of attack now. Although Mr. Healy, the Defence Secretary, went to Cyprus for a photo op and said Britain took part in the operation against the attacks earlier this week by the ballistic missiles. It was very, very little that with the RAF Typhoons that they can do. What they want Britain to do is to really beef up the contribution to keeping the sea lanes open, because the Houthis, armed by Iran, of course, are using more sophisticated weapons and more sophisticated tactics, multiple attacks, including sea drones, commando attacks, and so forth. It is very, very complex. And I didn't answer your previous question. I'm going to do a Boris Johnson here, but I will answer it. And the choices are, broadly, does Israel strike at one of three ranges of targets? Military targets, launch sites for the missiles and aircraft, missiles particularly, if they can find them. Nuclear sites, of which 6 or 7 are unknown, there are also unknown ones, and of the known ones, some are very, very deep dug into the earth, into mountains, are very difficult to get at. And finally, which Joe Biden was talking about yesterday, will they attack crucial oil ports or oil terminals?
That's Robert Fox speaking to us a little bit earlier on in the programme. Do stay with us. Sport is next with Aidan.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with free gear care, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong, everything was declared, but at the same time you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well, the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands, he's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's sports time. Sorry, the boys are talking about their gadgets.
Sorry, yes. I'm playing with computers.
It's a very nice computer.
It's very exciting.
He got a new laptop yesterday. He's very excited. It's like a child at Christmas.
It's 2 screens.
It's like a tablet, but a large version.
How many screens just before?
2 screens. 2. Like the number of doctorates I've got. 2 doctorates.
Dr. Dixon over here
Dixon.
with his fancy laptop.
All right, I've just realised that's made me sound like an absolute
It has.
brat.
It has. Are we allowed to say that word?
I was going to say something worse, but I tempered it down, so yes, complete plonker. But there you go, sometimes I have my moments. Aidan, talking of plonker.
I was waiting for that.
Couldn't resist.
No.
Couldn't resist. Sports.
Yes.
Should we talk about Mr. Lineker, who's out?
Yeah,
he's on his way out.
Well, we don't know. I mean,
he's
look,
going. He's going to tweet about it.
I'll give you some context. Earlier in the week, the Mail Online claimed to have seen an email leaked from the BBC that he was going to be out. It was from the head of the BBC Sport as well, Alex Kajelski, and they have since said, or they said quite quickly, to be fair, that they couldn't verify how true the email was. So there was
not a denial, though.
No, it's not. But no, this is from the Mail on Sunday. Sorry. So look, lots of conjecture began over the next sort of 48 hours or so whether he should stay. Lots of debate starting. Should he go?
And we knew he was going though, didn't we? Because Jermaine Genius was being lined up to take over.
Well, no, not necessarily. All we knew was that his contract was expiring. Now the contract expires on a 2 or 3 year basis, and it's usually kind of rolling. He just extends it, usually on more money. Don't forget, he's on £1 million a year. He's the highest paid presenter at the BBC. Now, what I would say, though, Stephen, it's the only show, or one of the only shows at the BBC in the last 10 years which has actually seen a rise in ratings. Most of the others have
Is that down to Gary Lineker, though?
I don't think it is. Well, look, I think he's good. I think he's good at what he does. The tragedy of all the stuff about his venture into politics in the last 3 or 4 years is that nobody remembers, especially the younger generation, just how good a footballer he was. He was a magnificent England player. He dug us out of so many holes down the years, and nobody really talks about that. They just see him as a kind of presenter. I know the guy who trained him, a guy called Brian Barwick, and he always said to me that Gary Lineker loves the live element of broadcasting. Now, Match of the Day is live, yes it is, but it's not the same as live football, an England match or a Champions League game. He's got plenty of other irons in the fire. I mean, he's 63 years old, so he can't go on forever. He's been.
Is he really?
He is. 25 years he's been at Match of the Day. Now, you'll remember Des Lynam.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a class act, actually, but who would have said that his successor would probably go on to do the job even better than him?
Do you know what? I mean, the thing is, I think Gary Lineker is very good on Match of the Day. Yeah. The problem is he's tarnished his career by the fact he's delving into politics and being controversial in his own way.
Yes.
And that sometimes you've got to just put a dividing line between your work life and what you think and do in private.
Well, I just think the venture into sounding off about politics in the last 3 or 4 years was very strategic on his part. I mean, I interviewed him a few times when I was at the News of the World, and he had a weekly column in the paper, and I used to do it sometimes. He was never interested in talking about politics then. And we had a huge reach. That was his opportunity to do it. And I think that it was a bid to stay relevant. I know it's a horrible cliche, but I do think that he did it to kind of, he saw a lot of his contemporaries of the last 5-10 years dispense with and cast aside. I just thought he maybe felt the need to diversify a little bit to get himself into more into the public eye, which you shouldn't really need to do with Match of the Day. They do attract a viewing
Stick to the day job
of millions. Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's possible. But listen, we'll see. I mean, we'll know at the end of the year. I don't think they'll enter negotiations until about January anyway, to be honest with you.
Well, one to watch then.
Yes, indeed.
Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I just thought this was quite fun. He's joked that he'll reimburse fans for a banner that they plan to release or unfurl at Manchester City. So they're going to. So he's from. It says
go now.
No. He's doing very well. It's not quite the opposite. They're saying he's from Catalonia, from Barcelona, and it's going to be a message. It's going to be a message in Catalan saying, "Pep, we want you to stay." And he was asked about it in his press conference yesterday, and he was so touched by it and so moved by it that he said, "You know what? There's this organisation, 1894, who normally are in charge of paying for these banners." He said, "Send me the bill. If it's £1,000, I'll pay for it." What a nice thing to do. I mean, to be fair, he's on a fair whack.
Yeah, he can afford
it. It's pennies to him, but that is nice.
Yeah, it is. So, and they're in action over the weekend. They have also requested to start their season late next year, given special dispensation just because of the World Club Cup. And Pep revealed yesterday that the Premier League have said no to that right now.
Yeah.
Well, who knows what division they'll be in for a start? with 115 charges hanging over.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't think we dealt with that quickly, if I'm honest.
What's going on with the transfer system? If it's not complicated enough already.
This is potentially seismic, actually. We had this European Courts of Justice yesterday said yesterday, or decreed yesterday, that it's going to be possible in future for a player to walk out of his contract halfway through the deal. Now, that could be the end of transfer fees. So every time I come in here talking about this player's gone for 60 million, this player's gone for 150 million, those days could be a thing of the past. Because, I mean, remember 30 years ago, the Bosman ruling, it meant that at the end of a player's contract, he was free to walk away, just as we would be in any other walk of life. And you know, I could see some logic behind that. But if a player is now going to be allowed to just drift off halfway through the contract, I'm not even sure that we'll even see contracts signed in future. But it could really shake things up. There's no question about that. And you know, we could. Some would say it's not a bad thing. We could see less money flowing through the game, but less of it's going to trickle down to the smaller clubs. And as I say, it was a player involving Lassana Diarra who walked out of his contract playing for a Russian club, Lokomotiv Moscow, because he hadn't been paid. And so that was his reason for walking away. His Russian club said that, well, OK, if you're going to walk out of your contract, you're going to have to pay the compensation of £16 million. He was the club he went to, Charleroi in Belgium, said, well, you're going to have to pay £8 million of it, and that prompted him to take the case to court. And this is why the court yesterday decided in Belgium decided that it's going to be you can't do that, basically. You can't do that, and he's right to just leave.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. How it turns out, but there's going to be appeals, I'm sure.
Yeah. Right, lovely. Thank you, Aidan. Jez has been in touch on the whole Bond thing.
Oh, yeah, I've got you all going on Bond this morning.
Yeah, it's political, though, this one.
Oh.
Political. He says, Keir Starmer could be the new Bond in For Your Lies Only, Gold in My Pocket Finger, and On Her Majesty's Tax Avoidance. There's no implication he's avoided tax, is there? I've not heard of that one.
No.
But very good, very witty. Well, there are some replies there as well. Anything else? Oh, Lie Another Day is also added. Yeah.
Jez, you've had your Weetabix this morning. How long did that take you to come up with? Yeah,
very good. I'm impressed. Right, we've got the papers heading away in just a moment, so don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You've come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grape to the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in still vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important
Absolutely.
thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel.
John Andrews, who's a regular messenger, morning John, on the bottom of the thing says, live and let pensioners die.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, it is dark,
That is
but
dark.
I'll tell you, it's relevant. Well done, John.
Yeah.
Good one. Anyway, let's see what's in the papers this morning. It is James Bond Day, in case you're just tuning in.
And
James
you're thinking,
Bond Day
why are we
today.
talking about James Bond? That's why.
Oh, apparently.
And on that theme,
Yes, here we go.
we've been talking about who would make a good Bond. So we thought,
oh,
let's involve our papers panel today. Look at this.
I love that suit on me.
Yeah, I'm quite enjoying my look as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, you look dapper.
Is that a Bond baddie?
I think you're the villain. I think you are the villain.
Yeah,
I think
see that.
I think we would be a box office hit.
Stephen,
Look at
I
that.
think you look very dapper.
And you look very sassy, Ellie.
Thank you.
It's either we look like a Box Fizz have reformed.
It is like a very old pop band.
I actually want that outfit. I think it would look really
You
good
look really
on me.
good, Steph. I think
I love it.
Very good job
You
of
look great.
editing there.
Thank you, guys.
Anyway, there you go. Stephanie's texting. Here. Maggie says Henry Cavill for Bond.
That's a very good suggestion.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But on to more important matters. Boris Johnson.
Yes.
Obviously, we've got the full story, the full interview tomorrow morning on Camilla's show at 9:30. But we've been getting these tidbits out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's doing the rounds, isn't he? He was on the TV last night as well, and he's given interviews to various newspapers as well. I think he's got his book to sell, Unleashed, which comes out next week, I believe. One of the things that he talks about is this Chagos Islands row, which is interesting, actually. So he describes it as total nonsense that
he's furious about it, isn't
well,
he?
yeah, but
Yeah.
however, Liz Truss has blamed Boris Johnson for setting the ball rolling over it when he was Prime Minister and sort of telling her to get on with starting off these negotiations. They properly kicked off when she was PM, and then it's culminated in, obviously, it happening on Labour's watch. So Boris Johnson, as you can imagine, slagging off Keir Starmer in this interview. He says, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands and see where they are and see where Mauritius is. Now, Mauritius obviously has been
about 1,000 miles.
It's been given... I mean,
Over 1,000
it's quite
miles
far
now,
away
yeah.
from here as well.
It is.
Chagos Islands, isn't
Oh,
it?
well, yes,
6,000,
it's closest to Mauritius than it is to us.
Yeah, so maybe it's not the strongest argument there, but yeah, there's a lot to chew over in Boris Johnson's interview. It strikes me, though, this is him trying to rewrite history a little bit, because I think he's probably got his eye on a comeback at some point.
Do you think he'd like to come back?
I think he would. I think he thinks he's got unfinished business. Now, that doesn't mean to say that he will come back, whether the Tory party would ever have him back, but I think a lot of the party members would.
Well, I think, when Boris was at the helm of the Conservative Party, he was quite popular with both the population and also in the party. It's just a shame the way his leadership ended. And I think he's better off being from the sidelines than actually being a leader again. I think too much has happened.
He's just too shambolic, I think, personally.
But some people would say that he lost support of the party, fair enough, but did he ever lose support from the public? I mean, perhaps he did. But he had that mandate in 2019. He was the one who had it.
He did, yeah. I mean, I remember the polls at the time weren't terribly favourable for him, obviously because of the Partygate stuff. He was remarkably unpopular. Now, he is now saying that he regrets apologising for...
so he wasn't really sorry then?
No, exactly. So it's... I would just wonder how it will go down with the public. People remember what lockdown was like. People remember not being able to go to funerals, not being able to be with loved ones when they died, at the same time as, obviously, these parties were going on in Number 10. So I wonder whether he's maybe calling this one wrong by trying to, as I say, rewrite history.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look at our first atheist age, Stephanie, according to the Mail.
I've always prided Britain as a Christian country, but that's all changing.
Well, we're meant to be, aren't we?
Yeah, we're meant to be, but that's all changing. Obviously, we're quite a multicultural society at the moment, so different religions and different faiths have become more prominent than Christianity. But now it seems that parents are no longer passing down religious beliefs onto their children. So now it's causing for uprise of atheism in the country. And it's one of those things where I think being an atheist these days means something else now. It doesn't mean that you haven't got no morals or you've got no integrity. Actually, you can be atheist and still have that moral sense of judgment. But I do think it's a shame. I do think, you know, as a Christian country, we should somehow still uphold those values. I think that's very much being lost. Like,
I mean, the thing is, it's more than values, though, isn't it? It's, you know, it's about having faith.
Yeah.
And that does seem
and a belief in God.
And I do feel like that is a personal thing as well, because I was raised up in the Roman Catholic Church, but as soon as I got to 14, 15, turned my back on it. I do consider myself Christian now, but I don't belong to a church. So I think
there's a lot of people like that.
Yes.
Spirituality.
And I think that's what it is now. We're in this new age of spiritualism where people are finding different ways to communicate how faithful they are and what it means to have that close relationship to spirituality.
Does Agnes still go to church?
No, she doesn't, but she is a woman of faith.
Oh, I bet she is.
Kevin, what do you think?
That's Mum, I love your mother.
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up, like Steph, I was brought up as a Catholic as well, went to Mass every week, and my two kids, I've had them baptised and take them to Mass when I can. Not every Sunday, because I work quite a lot of Sundays, but when I'm not working...
You take them?
I take the kids, and, you know, it's a personal choice. No criticism of people that don't. I'm probably in the minority, my age, I think, probably. And whether they choose to take their kids and get their kids baptised, who knows where we'll be when that happens. But yeah, it's a personal choice. I think as long as you live by some sort of moral code, I don't think it's that important that you go to but for personally speaking, I think it's important tradition to pass on to my kids, but that's, as I say, it's a personal choice.
My mum always said, and she raised us saying, if you stick to the 10 Commandments, you can't go too far wrong.
Yeah,
it's quite a good playbook for life, isn't it?
And I think
I've never coveted my neighbour's ass. Never know.
You've never looked at someone lustfully?
Lustfully? No.
Maybe not a question for this time of the morning.
Well, I did, but I married him, so it's...
very cute.
This is the stuff of dreams. Mind you, a man who must have had a bit of wonga anyway paid £1,000 for a little sketch, and it's turned out to be a Michelangelo.
He had a good eye, didn't he?
He certainly did. So this was in 1989. This unnamed British man paid less than £1,000 for a work known by an unnamed artist. No idea who had done it at the time. It's called Study of Jupiter by a then 15-year-old artist. And then experts analysed this piece of work and have come to the conclusion that it is an early Michelangelo.
The earliest?
The earliest Michelangelo. So for his £1,000 investment back in 1989, it could sell for £2 million.
Wow.
Look, is that going under auction?
Yeah.
So it's going to go for a hell of a lot more than 2 million.
You would have thought 2 million actually seems a bit small, really, for a Michelangelo, especially if had his earliest one. But you're right, this is not just your ordinary punter. I mean, even then, spending £1,000 on a piece of artwork,
a good investment.
In 1989 is quite a lot of money, but...
he knew it was something special, surely.
Yeah, well, he's obviously an art aficionado, but it's repaid in spades, isn't it? I mean, can you just imagine? I'd like to know what his lottery numbers are.
Because
he's incredibly,
always good to invest in art.
Incredibly fortunate guy. I can't believe it. That's you set for life.
That's phenomenal. I mean, some museums got to
that up. It's quids in.
No, absolutely. Can we talk about Oasis, please, Steph?
Yeah, Oasis Gate continues, but this time it's for US fans who are trying to get their hands on tickets for their reunion tour. The brothers have put a statement out saying that they need to be careful of being scammed for tickets because scammers are, you know, trying to scam people of money for tickets. They're saying that the only two credible sources to get tickets are from Twickets and Ticketmaster. But it's so weird that still in this day and age that scammers are able still to flog on the black market tickets which are not real. So they've put a statement out to say to be careful where you get your Oasis tickets from.
Although I feel like we were all scammed, certainly the British fans were all scammed when they went on sale a few weeks ago.
Did you get tickets?
No, so maybe that's why I think we were all scammed. But you know, people joined the queue thinking the tickets were this much, and then they were getting to the front of the queue, and they doubled or trebled in price. I mean, just because of dynamic pricing. And then Oasis announced this week that in America there wouldn't be dynamic pricing. So I just feel like, well, hang on a minute, why did the British fans end up getting stung, fleeced basically, when the American fans haven't? Now, it didn't change the fact that they're sold out, so people still pay. And I go on Twickets just about every day to see if there's any.
You're still
when I say it like that. But no,
I was almost scammed for Taylor Swift tickets actually, because I went online and there were people saying, yeah, we're selling 4 or 5 tickets, and then I nearly paid, and then the man's name didn't match up to this woman's profile picture that he had on. So you do have to have your wits about you.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Heck.
So many scammers out there.
Very quickly, are we going to see the end of pubs? Steph, according to the Sun?
It's a worry because West Street and the Health Secretary, he's planning to ban cigarettes being smoked outdoors, and recently what we saw before is when they brought in a ban for indoor smoking, almost 2,000 pubs shut within 3 years afterwards. So pubs are worried that this will have a knock-on effect, but it does feel like a nanny state. If someone wants to smoke outside, allow them to smoke outside. I don't see what the problem is.
No.
Obviously this is all in a bid to stop young children and young teenagers buying cigarettes, but I think they're going to buy cigarettes if they want to.
Well, yes.
I do think it's going too far.
It's not a passive smoking issue, is it?
No, it's not. And indoor smoking ban, fair enough. That's generally accepted now, I think, by the public. But I think outdoor smoking, and I'm not a smoker, but I would say that's fine, really, because you're not likely to be.
Thanks
both. See you later on.
Let's look at the weather with Alex.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain.
And good luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less. I think that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
a bit
awful.
like Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First questions to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get to say 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So essentially there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. Then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep, which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The Starmer government, is it really trying to reverse Brexit?
Well, Boris Johnson says yes, as he warns the UK is at risk of losing control.
Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
Fears over the Falklands as an emboldened Argentina take advantage of Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands surrender.
Brits told to flee Beirut as the government organises more emergency evacuation flights as Israel's offensive intensifies.
Now, the boss of Wetherspoons is hit out at calls to shrink the size of a pint. We're debating whether you think that's a good idea or not. I can sort of guess what you're going to say.
I think we know where you stand on that one. And today marks the annual celebration of cinema's most iconic MI6 agent, Bond, James Bond. We celebrate the British icon.
Good morning. Manchester United co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe says any decision to sack under pressure Erik ten Hag is, in his words, not my call ahead of United's visit to Aston Villa tomorrow. And could the end be nigh for Gary Lineker on Match of the Day?
There's a little bit of rain around today across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for most it's a fine day out there and generally the brighter day of the two this weekend. Join me later for a full forecast.
It is coming up to 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is GB News Breakfast. I think Charlie Rowley was feeling a bit left out of our James Bond chat.
Was he?
Yeah, I think he wanted to be James Bond, but nobody's actually emailed in and suggested that Charlie Rowley would make a good James Bond yet.
No, well, no.
Not yet.
I'll write in later.
We've had some great political views in. John, again, has said Starmer's James Bond pensioners in A View to a Kill. That's all quite hard work. We've had Mike has said Live and Let Pensioners Die has come through again. A few of you have done that. Brenda says...
Yeah, quite a few of you have done this one.
Brenda says, from Ali with love.
You're all getting very creative.
I tell you what, you're on fire today.
You're all getting very, very creative.
Very, very good.
But Charlie Rowley was feeling left out, so we thought we'd include him. This is him as Q. What do you think? Now, that looks quite good.
Yeah, it does.
Suits him.
So it's not quite Q-ish enough.
No.
For me, it needs to be a bit more geeky for me.
A bit older, probably, as well.
Well, you can't make Charlie older.
No, I suppose. Oh, you can do, on apps.
Well, have we got anybody else?
We've got all of us. I think there's one of you and me. Should we have a look at this?
Wow.
I would say the best one so far.
You look amazing.
You look amazing. I like your white jacket.
Is that a different picture of you? Have they got a different picture of you, Stephen?
I don't know. Yes, it is.
Yes, that's
Best
one.
happier with that one?
A little bit.
That's a nice one. That's one of you and I on the roof.
Is that
Remember?
what it is?
Yeah. When we did that photo.
Promo, wasn't
That's
it?
a nice one. Yeah. Nice. Yep. So we're pleased with that editing job. Thank you very much. Loads of you getting in touch on Labour as well this morning. Robert says, what a surprise. We're talking about Brexit. Boris Johnson thinks Labour government want to row back on Brexit. Robert says, Starmer, who fought alongside his Labour colleagues for years to stop Brexit and demand another referendum, is now going to put us back under EU rule. That's what Robert thinks.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think it will happen.
No.
But it might, because we can't just do it. And what would they want out of us, the EU, to go back in? We'd have to get rid of the pound for a kick-off.
Yes.
It'd be euro and all the rest of it.
Oh, it's not going to happen, is it?
I can't see it happening, but whether Brexit will get softened at the edges, I don't know.
Well, they do want closer ties with Europe, don't they? So whatever that means.
Thomas says the betrayal of Chagos Islanders, 22 billion spending on carbon capture, all part of attempts to deflect attention from freebies and cash for access.
And it is this £22 billion that people have an issue with, because June's just said how amazing this Labour black hole seems to have disappeared. They couldn't fund the winter fuel payment to pensioners, but they have found 22 billion, that same number, for a new project regarding carbon emissions.
Not that I want to go on the defensive for the Labour Party, particularly, but I'm guessing, and I haven't, to be fair, I haven't seen the details, but it won't be 22 billion, will it, in terms of
it's over 25 years.
Yeah. So it's less than £1 billion a year. Mind you, why don't they just delay it a year? Because it's only just £1 billion that the winter fuel thing is costing. Why don't they just delay it a year? and then do it? I mean, I know it's not as simple as that. But I have to say, it's just, I cannot understand how you would, as a new government, shoot yourself in the foot over winter fuel allowance in the way that they've done. It's just extraordinary.
They made it a huge announcement when it could have been snuck in, couldn't it, in the budget in October. It's a strange thing to make such a huge headline news about.
A couple of you have been in touch, John and Emily, saying, stop saying returning the islands, give back islands and things. These islands never belong to Mauritius or Argentina. Well, that's always an argument that is made, isn't it? And it's you go back a certain amount of time and sovereignty over these places, it all gets very confused. But no, so it's a fair point. But obviously, Argentina wanted the Malvinas, as they call them. I mean, look at Spain with Gibraltar. You know, and that's been a sovereign territory for, I don't know the date, but for a long time.
Yeah, and they're very British, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
And self-determination is a really important factor in all of this, and both people who live in Gibraltar and people who live in the Falklands, they want to be British, don't they? By an overwhelming majority.
Oh, yeah, well, you have to look at the Brexit vote. I mean, actually, and understandably for the people of Gibraltar, I mean, the Brexit vote was 99% against, because obviously it is causing them problems with on the border and everything else, going into La Linea and what have you. But it's, you know, they don't want to be Spanish.
No.
Just an idea of how strong the feeling was in the Falklands. Do you remember the Maradona handball goal against England in 1986? It was called the Hand of God. But it was called the Hand of God because Diego Maradona said afterwards that it was God's intervention as reward or as recompense for what happened 4 years earlier in the Falklands.
Wow.
Or the Malvinas, as Stephen pointed out, that the Argentinians called it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And one on Boris Johnson to end here. I presume Johnson's new book is written in crayon with illustrations and colour by numbers. Ooh, that's from Gary.
Harsh, Gary. But that new book, Unleashed, is coming out imminently, and Boris Johnson has been speaking to Camilla Tominey, talking about his time in office and, of course, his views on politics.
Well, in the wide-ranging interview, he says it will be a disaster if Sir Keir Starmer tries to row back on Brexit. Let's take a listen.
I believe that we're great if we do things on our own. I think we're great I think that national independence is extremely important, and I think that that point is proved beyond peradventure of a doubt in Unleashed.
Yes.
Because having secured full national independence, we were able to do things differently, such as the vaccine rollout, such as the AUKUS Pact, such as the taking a different stance from our European partners on Ukraine.
Do you think?
And I believe, and what worries me now is that the Starmer government is really determined to try to roll all this stuff back, and it will be a disaster. Unless we keep that proper control, we won't be able to do things like that again. So Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
What do you think Starmer and Reeves are trying to reverse Brexit?
So if we'd been a rules... This is the key point. Of course they are. Now, if we'd been a rules taker...
Yes.
In at the end of 2020, 2021, we would not have been able to authorise AstraZeneca and Pfizer. No, but you keep interrupting this because it's very, very important. And that was how, by March 2021, we had vaccinated 45% of the UK population.
The vaccine programme
compared to
will always
10%.
be part of your legacy.
All right, let's talk to former special advisors to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and political commentator Andy Williams. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Andy, can we start with you? Yes. Keir Starmer's basically pulling us back into the EU, whether we like it or not. It's a disgrace.
No, he's not. He's just rebuilding the relationships that the last government trashed with our European allies.
What does that mean?
What does what mean?
What does rebuilding and closer ties with the EU actually mean?
Well, I think it means that
it's the back door.
Well, I really don't think that's the case. I mean, Keir Starmer, obviously, we all know that he was in favour of a second referendum. He was a very, very strong Remainer, but he has, over the years, moved to a position where he doesn't think that would be the right thing to do. And I think he recognises that on lots of the big challenges facing us, whether it's climate change or, a war going on in Europe or the situation in Gaza, we need to have strong relationships with our major European colleagues and friends.
It's one thing to be able to talk to them and discuss things and all well and good, but they don't just want that, do they? If we want a closer relationship, we have to give something in exchange.
Yeah, but I mean, if we were to go anywhere near going,
something,
we would. And I think it's the whole Brexit process showed that there was no way of reaching that sort of accommodation, because what the EU would want is the UK to go back into the single market, and that's not going to happen. So I really, really just don't think this is a realistic possibility at all. And I actually think it's Boris Johnson in these comments, it's him covering up for the fact that his version of Brexit wasn't a very good one. It was a bad deal.
Charlie, bad deal Brexit from Boris Johnson?
I don't think so. He got it done. That was the will of the people. And as Andy said, Sir Keir Starmer wanted a second referendum, something that going against exactly what the public, the great British public of this great country, voted for. So I don't know what Sir Keir Starmer's plans are. But look, when you leave a club and when you leave something for the first time, of course there's going to be frictions and there's going to be fallouts. And Europe didn't want us to leave. Of course they didn't. And so, of course, there are going to be tensions. Now, Rishi Sunak obviously tried to repair some of that through the Windsor Framework and the Windsor Agreement. And so that was just the starting block. So I don't think we're seeing anything new in terms of just repairing relations. You can do that on the one hand, but what you can't do and what you can't have are these restrictions or impositions imposed by the EU again, whether it's through the courts, whether it's through trade, whether it's through economic sort of arrangements, which will hamper this country, bearing in mind that the UK, since leaving the EU, has had the fastest growth in the G7. That's because of our Brexit freedoms.
That's true, isn't it?
Well, not over the whole period.
It is.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that's right. I mean, the thing is that our economy overall post-Brexit is much worse off than it was. We could relitigate Brexit. I still think it was a disaster. I think all the facts suggest it was.
COVID had a part to play because every economy was shut down, and we've been able to, because of the freedoms that we've got and not having the shackles of the EU and having to do things, with agreement with 27, 28 other states, we've been able to grow and we've been able to turbocharge our industries and really get going.
I don't think that's the case. But the point is that the Labour government's looking at rebuilding the relationship, and actually we have, as part of the deal, an opportunity to review the deal. I think it's in 2026. We have an opportunity to look at what we agreed back in 2021 and decide which bits of it are working and which bits of it aren't. And I think it's good to be pragmatic.
But in that sense, how are we meant to trust Starmer with our sovereignty when he's giving away the Chagos Islands and actually couldn't make a solid promise for the Falklands?
Well, on the Chagos Islands, I mean, as we all know, that process was started by a Conservative government. There were 13 rounds of negotiations. 11 of them were undertaken by a Conservative Foreign Secretary. Boris Johnson actually started that process as Prime Minister.
Stopped it.
David
Cameron stopped it.
No, he did not.
He did.
He didn't.
When he was Foreign Secretary.
He paused it. He didn't. He paused it. He didn't stop it. And actually, the US welcomed the decision. They said it's a win for diplomacy. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, said it's a win for diplomacy.
We all know the United States is actually not particularly happy.
No, we don't know that.
Diego Garcia, for them as a military base, is hugely important.
And they've retained it.
Now we're having Yeah, but having to
For 99 years, and they're renting it off Mauritius.
Well, let's see. But I think I really just don't know why there is a huge kerfuffle over this. It's almost as though...
Because it's a key strategic military unit that...
And we've retained the base, which was the important thing.
And what it's done, because this government has got absolutely no strategy whatsoever apart from pinching the pockets of our pensioners. Well, they are. There'll be many people up and down this country, up and out, that won't get £200 this year because of their winter fuel payment being pinched. All the while train drivers are getting a bung, and all the other unions. At the same time, when we're facing conflict on the international stage, we're obviously involved in the war in Ukraine, we're obviously having to evacuate people from Beirut and in the Middle East. We've now given away a strategic part of our overseas territory, only to now allow people like Argentina, countries like Argentina, to flex its muscles and try and say to the people of the Falkland Islands something that was hard fought and hard won under one of the great British Prime Ministers that this country's ever had, Margaret Thatcher.
That's just not going to happen. It's not gonna, we're not going to give away the Falkland Islands.
All right, on that note, let's have a quick listen then to what the Prime Minister said yesterday on this when questioned by GB News.
Argentina now saying they want the Falklands back. Can you guarantee that under Labour no other overseas territories of Britain will be signed away?
Look, the single most important thing was ensuring that we had a secure base, the joint US, in particular UK base. Hugely important to the US, hugely important to us. We've now secured that, and that is why you saw such warm words from the US yesterday.
Andy, he doesn't answer the question. Why doesn't he answer it?
I think the biggest problem with this government so far has not been policy. I think it's been comms. I think the comms have been really, really poor. I wish Keir Starmer would just give a straight answer to a straight question, because we're not going to get... I mean, unless if I've missed something, and if I'm wrong, I'll come back on here and say sorry. There's no chance we're going to give away the Falkland Islands. Why doesn't he just say that? Yeah. And by the way, it's a different subject, but giving back that £6,000 earlier in the week is one of the most ludicrous comms moves I've seen any government perform for quite a while.
Well, it's too little, too late.
Too little, too late. And actually, he's given back some of the money, but not all the money. Yeah. He says he's done nothing wrong, but he's giving the money back.
It's not making the rest of the cabinet do it.
And he's put, he's put pressure on everybody else to answer the question as to whether they're going to give money back or not.
It ties perfectly with Eric, who's been in touch, because we've been talking about Bond and what have you today. And Starmer Bond, Keir Bond, he said one of his films could be Freebies Are Forever. Very good. Very good. Well, that's going to dog him for a while, isn't it? Thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Now, at 14 minutes past 8, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
More than 250 British nationals have left Lebanon on flights chartered by the UK government. Foreign Secretary urging any remaining UK citizens who want to leave to register immediately. The UK's chartered a flight to leave Beirut tomorrow amid ongoing tensions.
Lancashire Police Force has apologised after putting down a family's pet XL bully dog by mistake. In a statement, the police said it had given the family an unreserved apology for euthanising the seized dog, named Bruno, while the owners were in the process of applying for an exemption to keep him.
And Parkrun is marking its 20th anniversary today. It started with just a handful of people in London. Now 2,500 locations in 23 countries. Its founders started it to aid his recovery. And he says it's grown into a force for both physical and mental health.
Now let's take a look at the weather with Alex Deacon.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, As I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles, and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night, but elsewhere the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow, much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England, but only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy actually in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens, quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now,
Cash.
Yes, some good news this morning.
Get your hands on it.
Yeah, lots of cash. £36,000. Biggest cash prize of the year so far. Here's how it can be yours.
Best demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck.
Indeed. Leslie's been in touch. Saying, watching the snippets of the bumbling Boris interview, I really haven't missed him. I think he should have laid low a bit longer. We're not ready for his craziness during these hard times. If you disagree with that, get in touch, gbnews.com/yoursay. We've got the full interview for you tomorrow at 9:30.
We'll be back in just a few minutes' time.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week, Free Speech Brighton, a sister group of the Free Speech Union, claimed that they were kicked out of a pub in the city for discussing trans issues in schools. The group booked a room in a pub for an evening of speeches and discussion when they claimed security guards came and asked them to leave after one speaker began to talk about this topic. Now, a clip of the evening was in fact posted to social media. Can you give us some background to what happened, what the event was for, and why you booked it?
Our normal pub was being refurbished, so about 3 weeks ago I went in and booked a local pub for a meeting, and they didn't ask any questions about what sort of meeting. It was in a back room. It was mainly secluded from the rest of the pub, so I thought it would be fine. But anyway, they didn't ask any questions. They took my booking. We arrived, I set up. The first speaker started speaking, who's a retired teacher who is concerned about trans in schools and how that affects children. But she was talking purely about children. She was not talking about adults who have protected characteristics, obviously. And then towards the end of her speech, I became aware of security guards standing behind me in the middle room. So I went to have a quick word with them and see what they wanted. And they said, we've had a complaint. And I said, what's the complaint? And they wouldn't say. Then they said, will you come and talk to the landlord? So I went to the front of the bar and they indicated this chap was the landlord, but he looked about 20, so I don't think he was the landlord. So I said, I hear you have a complaint about us. Can you tell me what it is? And he couldn't.
That sounds very Kafka-esque, as though you've committed a crime, but they can't tell you what the crime is.
Well, that's what I couldn't understand, because, you might... Obviously, they can't tell you who the complainant is, but they should be able to tell you what the complaint is.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Camilla Tominey this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
It's 8:23 now. The boss. Sorry. It's not worth explaining. We've had a bit of an issue here in the studio, and it's not smelling very nice.
We have, but we're going to be okay.
We're not going to be okay.
I'm not sure we are, actually.
We actually feel really, really sick.
Yes.
There's been a bit of a pipe issue. I think a pipe has burst somewhere.
We'll just say that much. I think you can gather what we're saying.
Utterly horrific. Anyway, let's return to what we're talking about, which is the boss of Wetherspoons. Who doesn't like going for a spoons on a Sunday afternoon? So Tim Martin, he's slammed what he calls daft suggestions for pint glasses to be banned in pubs.
Well, it comes as a response to academic research, which suggests that pint glasses should be switched to smaller 2/3 for health benefits.
Beggars belief, frankly. All right, let's talk to former Fat Families presenter Steve Miller and pub owner Kate Stewart. Morning to you both. Kate, I'm baffled. I'm baffled by this because A, having a pint is a great British thing, and B, if you want a smaller glass, have a half, and if you want to drink twice as many halves, you can have the same amount anyway.
It's absolutely ludicrous. Another ludicrous decision coming from the government too. Are just full of ludicrous ideas right now. If you want to go into a pub and have a pint, you will go in and have a pint. If you want to have a half, you'll have a half. I don't think this is going to be there's going to be no benefit whatsoever to people's health or the amount of alcohol that is consumed. People have a time. You go into the pub at 7 o'clock, say you stay till 11 o'clock, that's it. You're going to go in and the number of pints you drink will be the number.
Steve, what do you think of this? Does it actually have any health benefits to have a 2/3 rather than a pint?
I have to say, if I said to the guys that I drink with down the pub that you're going to have halves, not pints, I'd get a pint over the head, to be honest with you. That's how it would work. However, I do think there are certain instances, I think it's a daft idea, but there are certain instances where maybe at a local level, as a landlord, you would actually insist that certain customers do drink by the half measure, so to speak. So, for example, if I run a pub and I know that one of my customers is a binge drinker and they're potentially going to become ill, would I insist that they use half a pint, not the pints? Yeah, I would. It's common sense. The same would be if someone's done an alcohol reduction program. Would I insist that they, for example, to help them keep that reduced, use a half pint measure? Yeah, I would. So I'm not saying ban pints. It would be it's a stupid idea. But I think there's certain instances where it would actually help the customer in terms of their health. You've got to remember that alcohol is one of the biggest triggers of cancer. So it's about a balance.
Look, Steve makes some points. Would any of it work, Kate?
Absolutely not, Steve. How am I supposed to say to someone, no, you're only allowed a half pint? There'd be absolute outroar. People would be kicking off. You can't single people out in a public house and say you're
How
only
you
allowed
do it
half
though,
pint
Kate.
glasses.
It's how you do it, innit? So
No, it's not. It's how you do it
it's-
as a responsible landlord, is to be able to say to someone, you've had enough. That's what we do. And as a responsible landlord, I've been in this game many, many years. I've never had one sanction off police licensing or anything else. I know when someone's had enough, and I will go over to
So
them
let
and
me
say,
put this
you
to
can't
you then,
serve you no
Kate.
more.
Kate, I get your point, Kate, and I think I'm not for banning pints at all. But if let's say I'd had open heart surgery, and I've come into your pub and I'm drinking a lot, would you not feel there's an ethical obligation to tell me, you've been drinking lots of pints, Steve, you're down to half a pint? Because it could kill me.
I'm not a doctor, I'm a landlord. What am I supposed to do? Ask people for the medical history. Right, before you come in, I need a full medical history off your doctor to see how many pints
No,
you've had.
I'm not saying that, Kate. I'm saying that if you knew that I, for example, God forbid, had got cancer, for example, or I've had
Now, hold on,
surgery,
Steve, hold on a minute, because it's all getting a bit convoluted. You've got to say, we like having you on, Steve, because you talk common sense. You've got to say on this one, Kate's beaten you at your own game, hasn't she?
No, I actually don't agree. I know, because you're not listening to what I say. What I say is, I don't want pints banned. It would be stupid. I deserve a pint over my head if I endorse that. What I am saying is this. If I run a local boozer, listen, if I run a local boozer and I've got a customer who's not well, I feel obliged to make sure I'm not serving them a load of ale in pints, so to speak, in this context, that could make them potentially ill and die.
So you're saying pints should be banned for some people, not all people?
If someone's dying, yeah.
Kate?
If someone's dying and wants to go to a supermarket and go and buy 20 cases and go and sit in the house and drink them. But it is the issue. You're talking about alcohol being the biggest killer, one of the biggest contributors to cancer. OK, that's fine. But a pub, we've got jurisdiction. That same person can walk into a supermarket, buy unregulated amounts of alcohol and go and sit in the house and drink them. So
I agree
why
with you
is
on
the
that,
pub getting all the blame? Why is it always a pub? What about the supermarket? Well, you're asking me to be a doctor and stand at the door and say, tick it off, right? What's your health? What's your background? How many pints are you allowed today? That's
a really fair point, Steve, that she's saying you can't monitor. She's within her rights to say, you've had enough, I'm not serving you anymore. But to say, well, I'm only going to serve you in certain size glasses. Or
let me speak. Let me repeat the situation, right? I do not agree with banning pints. However, if I'm a local boozer and I've got a regular customer that is coming out of hospital, that isn't well, maybe it's a customer that's got an alcohol problem, it's the same as gambling problem, it's my duty to help them drink less if they're about to, pop it, potentially.
No, it's... But as you would say, so I'm gonna say something to you, Steve, but let Kate respond just so she gets a bit of a word in. But the point is, as you would say about fat people, you would say it's your responsibility. You're drinking too much. You're eating too much. You've got to eat less. And it's the same with booze, isn't it, Kate? It's up to people to decide how much they're going to drink.
I think if I went over to someone and said, right, you're fat, you're only allowed half pint glasses, I'd be the one getting a pint glass over my head because, you can't go... You're insulting people as well. You've got that level of...
Who's suggesting you do that? Who's suggesting... I'm not suggesting you do that. Why you... Well, I'm not suggesting...
All right, someone's got a health problem or whatever.
I'm talking about cancer victims. I'm talking about people who have had heart surgery.
How many cancer victims who are on the last legs going to a pub?
I think quite a lot do, actually. A lot do.
I don't see them in my pub. And if someone was on the last legs, I'd be going over and saying to them, how are you, how are you feeling? You build a rapport up with people. I get that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. You build a rapport up so you can tell them you're going to serve them half pints, not pint glasses. That person could die.
There's no way I'm going over to
All right, you two. We're out of time. But thank you. Very good. Lively.
Do you know, I love Steve Miller. I really like Steve Miller. I think he's a fantastic fella. But on this one, Kate...
You won that one, I think.
Oh, I'd got Kate's pub any day of the week.
I think Alan, in capital letters, we already serve half pints.
Well, we do.
We do. That's a good point.
I have to say, if you forced smaller measures on people...
No, just go elsewhere. If you just said, I'm going to give you a two-thirds, they'd say, well, I'll go to another pub then.
Or they'd drink a third more, order a third more stuff, wouldn't they? Some people have said, well, it's like in Europe where you get half a litre, which is about 60, 70 mils less than a pint. Well, you do, unless you say, well, I'll have a tanke or whatever, and then you get a litre. You just get twice as much. I mean, it's absolutely crackers. And you know, and as Steve would say, if you're seriously ill and you shouldn't be drinking that much. Well, it's not for the landlord to turn you down.
No.
It's for you to do it. It's for your family and friends to have words.
As Kate says, she's not a doctor. I'm not a doctor.
She was very good. I
Very
like Kate.
good, yes. I like Kate too.
I'm very surprised I'm on the other side of an argument with Steve, because normally I agree with him.
Yeah, we can see loads of views coming in, so we'll share some of those with you when we can.
Yeah. OK, in the meantime, thousands of motorcyclists are going to take part in a Ride to the Wall trip today. We'll tell you what it is in just a moment.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's a huge financial and mental strain for parents, but we have this system now where it talks about they bringing a family member to help, but I don't think that's happening a lot of the time. I think people are having to be off work, look after their child, and often, sorry to say, but their school always calls the mum, and then you have this situation where you have nobody to look after your child. People's grandparents don't seem to want to do it so much, and often family members aren't just down the road. So what we have is no village. And I think it's really important when you have a child that you need that village.
Are children getting more sicker than they used to be? Or is it just that we take the odd sniffle a bit more seriously now since 2020?
Yes, I do think the odd sniffle can be. I know in my school they say 3 days away, you know, the slightest little thing, and it's like...
If you have a cold?
Yeah, no, please, go in, yeah. And
3 days off if you have a cold for a child, and we wonder why all these parents aren't at work. I think some of these figures about people who could be working and aren't working, they're not necessarily on benefits, but some of them will be people who, during the pandemic, particularly parents, decided to get a different work-life balance. They quite liked being at home, and they realised the children are benefiting from it. Do you think those people are in these statistics, Annette?
Of people staying at home with not working?
Who decided to not go back to work of working age?
Yes, I think a lot of people don't want to go into an office anymore either. They've had that little bit of freedom and they're like, I'm not going in. And I know employers are trying to get them to go in, but they just want to be at home. They want to be near their children if their children are sick, whether that's the mum or the dad. And also a lot of people don't live near their office or wherever. They don't want to commute. Train fares have gone up, so they say, well, why should I pay? So you have this whole knock-on effect throughout the economy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
24 minutes to 9 o'clock now. Thousands of motorcyclists from across the UK are gathering at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire for the annual Ride to the Wall, as they call it. It's a special event to honour and remember the names engraved on the Armed Forces Memorial.
Well, since 2008, motorcyclists of all ages have participated in this unique pilgrimage, paying tribute to those who have served and sacrificed for their country.
Let's head to the National Memorial Arboretum. Our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, is there. Morning, Jack.
Yeah, good morning to you both. This is one of the most fantastic sights in the world when you see the motorcyclists arrive. It's one of the biggest days in the calendar here for the National Memorial Arboretum. Delighted to be joined this morning by Philippa Rawlinson, who's the director of the National Memorial Arboretum. For those that have never heard of this before, just tell us a little bit about what this day is all about.
Well, it's a very, very special day, as you said here, Jack, at the National Memorial Arboretum. It's one of the biggest days of our year here, and we're expecting somewhere in the region of 8,000 motorbikes to arrive at the Arboretum. It's been growing over the last 18 years. Martin Dickinson, the founder of Ride to the Wall, had this idea of riding towards the Armed Forces Memorial just over in the Arboretum grounds and doing that to remember those that can no longer ride by his sides. As a veteran, really feeling that loss of his comrades. And since 18 years ago, it's just grown every year. And we love working with the Ride to the Wall community today, and we can see them every day of the year here.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? Because we see the bikes that are dressed up, whether it's the Union flag or whether it's poppies, and they've all got their leathers on. You've got your leathers on as well, because you're going to be riding this morning as well, aren't you? Absolutely.
They're a really generous, warm-hearted community, and for the last 4 years, they've invited me and my chair of trustees to ride in with them. I'm really excited this year because we're going on a longer ride. They said, do you want to come on the normal one or do you want to do a different one? It's a bit longer. We're like, yes, we're going to come and ride and see a different side of the community. And that spirit, that camaraderie, that coming together, that pilgrimage here to the Armed Forces Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum is a really tangible symbol of modern remembrance, coming together to remember.
And it raises a lot of money for you as well. It's all about donation with to ride, and it's more than £1 million, about 1.6 million since it started back in 2008. That must running and be able to deliver that place for people to remember, year after year.
Absolutely, the support of the Wallers is really generous. Last year they raised over £160,000 with the Wall. The way it's going this year, I'm sure they're going to top that with their amazing generosity, and that really does make a difference to us here as an independent charity. To what we can do for sharing and caring for those names of those who have given so much for our country.
And it is quite the spectacle, isn't it? As you mentioned, we're expecting around 8,000 motorcyclists. I mean, they just come one after another. And like you said, each person on one of those bikes has each got a different story, whether it's their son that we know somebody's brothers, whether it's uncles, daughters, everyone on those bikes has got a special story about why they want to do this.
Absolutely, I know that one of the furthest pilgrimages here is John Foster, who's cycling coming up on his motorbike from Spain to remember his son Robbie, who was sadly killed in Afghanistan. And that feels very timely because just later this month, our next big event at the Arboretum is an event to mark 10 years since the end of combat operations in Afghanistan. And I know that many Wallers will be coming back for that to remember those like Robbie who gave their lives in that conflict. That's just one of the many stories that will all be coming here today, and there'll be lots of dust in their eyes as we all stop and remember at the service at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Philippa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'll let you go carry on getting ready because I know you've got a motorcycle to get onto, but thank you very much to Philippa, and we're going to have a very amazing event this afternoon as thousands of motorcyclists come here to the Arboretum for that special service of remembrance.
Yeah, and hopefully raise lots of money as well. Jack Carson, good to see you. Thanks for bringing that to us.
See, Jack's got his poppy on, which is what you should... Oh, I was just wondering, when is the time to start wearing poppies?
Oh, as soon as you can get your hands on one, I'd say.
I've just ordered a new one, actually. I buy a new one every year from the Royal British Legion, and this is like a little row of poppies, like a band of poppies.
That sounds good.
So...
I've got the blingy one. Which probably doesn't surprise
you. Yeah, but you've got to renew it every year, otherwise...
Well, I've actually lost my one, so I will need to renew a new one. Yeah.
The Royal British Legion do loads of really nice sort of poppies, so I've got a box full now.
It's a poppy for every person.
Yeah, so just get a new one every year, and I mean, they cost a bit more, but, it's all going to a good cause, isn't it?
That it is, yeah. Do stay with us when we're going through the papers with Stephanie and Kevin. That's next.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19 books, TV, most important.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, what, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes, I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, you know, the last of good. There is a Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, you know, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible,
you know,
isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
You are. But you, and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on.
Gene Kelly,
and
my
Gene
favourite.
Kelly. Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Going through the papers now with Showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci and political editor at HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. Very good morning.
Yes. Because we always say HuffPost. Yes. But then last time you were on, someone had put Huffington Post.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Are you meant to be? What is it meant to be?
It's HuffPost UK. We are.
Is that the name?
That is the name. But a lot of people, because it used to be Huffington Post. Yeah. A long time ago, so people just. A lot of people say that. I never bother correcting, really. Yeah. It is HuffPost. Officially. HuffPost UK.
What's your favourite breakfast cereal? Sugar Huffs.
Like another.
Very good.
Huff pun. Yeah. I'll just go with Sugar Huffs.
Right, there you go. Right.
But Kevin, we will stay with you because apparently votes have turned on Labour after the freebie row.
Yeah, well, the Conservatives are currently going through a leadership contest, but judging by these numbers, they might as well just not bother because they seem to be doing OK by not really having a leader because the Labour are doing so badly. So the result at the election was Labour on 35%, the Tories on 24%. It's now 30% Labour and Conservative 25%, so they're only 5 points behind. Yeah, although, interestingly, Reform have gone from 15% up to 20% now as well, so they're only 5 behind the Conservatives. But yeah, it's just a result of Labour having... It's only been 12 or 13 weeks since the election, and they've had a bit of a nightmare, really.
Everyone said it was going to be a short honeymoon, but I didn't know it was going to be this short.
I didn't think it was short as this.
Well, it wasn't...
Fuel, freebies, all this stuff.
But before even all of that, I mean, it was riots in the first week, wasn't it? And criticism of the way they handled that. It took a week before they even had a Cobra meeting.
Yeah, although I think most people think he probably did OK because they got a handle on it quickly. Yeah. The riots were less in the end than people thought because they were banging them all up in jail. But since then, it's just got worse. We talked earlier about the winter fuel announcement, which has been politically devastating for them.
And Andy Williams was making the point earlier that it's not been the policy that's been the problem necessarily, it's been the comms, it's been the advice that's been given to the likes of Keir Starmer. I mean, everyone's seen the £6,000 being handed back now. Why would you do that so too little too late, he said?
Yeah, and he's absolutely bang on. It's just put a target on the back of every other minister. So every time that a minister comes up on GB News, I'm sure they will now be getting asked, oh, hang on a minute, you got this, are you going to pay that back? Now, Keir Starmer yesterday said it was a personal decision. He's not telling other ministers to do it. But the question surely flows from that as well. If he's doing it, why aren't you? And I can't see how that is doing much for morale within the cabinet.
Tell you what won't do much for morale, Steph. If you go on an all-inclusive holiday in Spain, drinks could be limited.
Indeed. Well, the Brits, we have a bad reputation for Brits abroad in Spain and places like Spain for boozing too much, but now all-inclusive resorts in places like Magaluf and San Antonio in Ibiza, they're saying they're limiting it to 6 drinks per holiday maker, so you can have 3 with your lunch and 3 later on in the evening.
And that's it.
And that's it. But I'm sorry, the whole reason people pay for all-inclusive is that they can eat as much as they want, they can drink as much as they want, but clearly Spanish resorts have had enough of UK holiday makers going over and beyond and drinking excessively. But I think this will backfire on them because people will just avoid these kind of resorts where they're being limited on how much they should be drinking and potentially eating in the future.
6 drinks across the course of a day.
It's not a lot.
To be honest, I mean, in all seriousness, I thought it meant 6 drinks an hour.
No. 3 drinks at lunch, then 3 drinks for your evening meal.
Why would you pay an all-inclusive?
You just wouldn't go, would you?
That's the whole point of holiday.
That's what people go on holiday for.
But at the same time, I do see where the Spanish resorts come from, because if they are having holiday makers who were excessively getting drunk, drinking about 20 drinks by the poolside at lunch, it's a bit too much to handle.
But you'd imagine the vast majority don't do that. It sounds like it's the minority who kind of ruined it for everyone, if that's what they're doing.
But again, it's your own personal responsibility, isn't it? How much you drink.
Don't you? And that's the whole point, is that you've paid in advance for everything that you're going to eat and drink, and then if they then put a limit on it...
And they give you cheap stuff anyway.
Yeah.
It's not like branded nice stuff,
No,
is it?
it's not, exactly.
3 drinks is when the party's just getting started.
Yes, exactly.
Or that's just breakfast, really.
Now, Kevin, it would be hard to do a park run after 6 drinks, wouldn't it? Do you like a park run on a Saturday morning?
Well, I've got to admit,
Oh, no, you're one of those, aren't you?
I don't know, because I'm usually working. But,
usually here,
or doing or ferrying the kids around, but I signed up for it, and I've never actually done one.
No, good. No, hats off. I admire and respect you for that.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, one day I took a notion, and I really should do it. And I went on the website and I signed up, and they send you like a barcode that you print off and you meant to put on your running top so they can time you. And I've never even printed that off. And that was like 2 years ago. So I've never actually done it. However, lots of people do. I mean, it's actually amazing. So it's now 20 years it's been going, which is remarkable. And it started off by a guy called Paul Sinton Hewitt, who gathered 13 runners for a lap around Bushy Park 20 years ago, Bushy Park in southwest London. Now it has more than 2,500 locations in 23 countries.
Wow, it's gone global.
It's gone global,
You have to pay to take part.
You're asking the wrong guy.
I don't think any of us have actually done a park run.
You'd be minted then, won't you?
Yeah, I don't think you do. I don't think you pay. I think a lot of people do it as a charity. They'll fundraise while doing it.
A free community event.
Yeah. So
He's regretting that now.
You'd have been quids in. But loads of folk do it, and it keeps people fit. Then I think it's got to be a good thing. So I'm told.
I've never done a park run. No, I used to do 800 metres when I was in high school, and I was really good. I wanted to be like Denise Lewis, but other than that, since leaving high school now, I'm not a runner. I would do a walk round the park, like 5k.
Park walk?
Yeah,
with a coffee in hand.
With a coffee and a nice little chihuahua.
Your sunnies on.
But other than that, no. I'm not a runner.
No, I'm not a runner.
My friend did a park run the other day for the first time ever, just fancied it one Saturday morning, and he went and ran it and won the whole thing.
Oh.
What? Yeah, like above the semi-professional athletes and everything. Yeah.
God, you'd never done it before?
Never done it before.
Oh,
just showed up
new
in the park
hobby.
one day. Yeah, and apparently they all had their professional sunglasses and their fancy trainers, and he just bowled up and won the whole thing.
But that's a good
story.
thing about it.
Yeah.
But that's the good thing about it, though.
No, don't you love that? It's the dark horse, the underdog.
Folk who take it seriously, like, as you said, the glasses and all that, But you've got other folk who are just like fun runners, really. The time doesn't really matter, you know, as long as you're enjoying it.
I think it's a good social activity. And people
Taking
are coming
part
quite creative with it.
Absolutely.
And all that.
Absolutely.
Steph, should we look at The Guardian? And police took bribes to help Al Fayed persecute staff.
Yeah, the scandal's getting more sinister as the weeks go on. Now, there's been claims that police officers at Scotland Yard accepted bribes from Mohammed Al Fayed in terms of bribes like cash payments, even Harrods hampers. And this was all him trying to cover up some of the sexual allegations that were coming against him. There was one even against his nanny who ended up being imprisoned for an apparent £12,000 theft after she tried to raise up allegations that he had sexually assaulted her. So I think with this kind of story, you can tell that no stone has been left unturned with this scandal. And hopefully there will be some naming and shaming with this case. But it's dreadful I always see in these cases, it just goes to show how people of power are able to buy authorities in such situations. And the people we should be trusting, i.e. the police, they are easily susceptible to these kind of bribes as well, which is just dreadful.
I suppose. Well, it's
if it is true.
If it's true, I mean, it's just it's every time something like this comes out, and you say, well, why wasn't more done? Why didn't people stand up? It's time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's one of those stories that it's shocking, but maybe not that surprising. Because you think if it went on for as long as alleged, and he's such a high-profile figure, how could he have done that without it being covered up, aided and abetted effectively by people a very senior level in the police? And it's shocking because if you can't trust the police,
who can you trust?
Who can you trust?
No, it is worrying, but you do get it all. I mean, people who behave very badly, who are public figures, even if it's not of a sexual nature. But still, nobody stands up and says anything. No one puts their head above the parapet.
They're too powerful.
Turn a blind eye. Will I lose my job over it? Will I lose my livelihood, my career? And the allegations are that a lot of these women, they were threatened. Their families were threatened as well. You know, oh, your dad's got a business. His business will be shut down in the next. You know, if you go ahead with this. Allegation, you know, so it's
just horrific.
It's horrific, really. Yeah.
Dreadful, isn't it? Right, on that note, we should leave it. It's been very good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you both. Thank you very much indeed.
I'll go and do a part run.
No.
You've still got time. It starts at 9. Get yourself out there.
Is it on a Saturday?
Yeah, 9 o'clock on a Saturday. If you're headed to a park run in the next few minutes, best of luck to you.
Yeah, while you're doing it, do let us know.
Yeah.
Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you, whether you're in or out today. Here's Alex.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night, but elsewhere the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow. Much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. But only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy, actually, in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens. Quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Richard, you know, the King will probably fly there, I would imagine, with the Queen. You can guarantee they'll have to make a point about offsetting their carbon just to keep that lot happy. They won't use the walkabout term because they'll have to keep the Aboriginal community happy over there. Obviously, they'll be fine that the Queen's face has now been taken off banknotes over there, replaced, I believe, by a member of the Aboriginal community, naturally. You know, you've got all of these tick boxes that the King and the royal family have to do, instead of just maybe, I don't know, leading, being there, being present. Why do they keep bowing down to this stuff?
Well, firstly, as I say, I mean, if you look at the Commonwealth, there are 56 countries. Now, I think that's an enormously important institution, and we benefit in all sorts of ways, as do the other countries who are members of it. Now, if you don't take account, with times changing, by the way, of course, as they did during Queen Elizabeth's reign, if you don't take account of various sensitivities, especially certain pressure groups, I'm not suggesting that we write off our history as being something that's dreadful. There are ups and downs and pluses and minuses, we all know that. But the point is to be sensitive to other cultures, and that is absolutely pivotal.
What we're seeing in the UK, a lot of these same issues do crop up in Australia, especially with freedom of speech and saying the wrong thing, getting cancelled. I've met with so many people who have personally, like, they've been deplatformed, lost their jobs just for having an opinion, just for potentially saying the wrong thing, and then losing their livelihood as a result. So with Australia, I think particularly this is the trend that we saw from 2020 with the lockdowns, especially in Melbourne, some of the harshest lockdown restrictions in the world. Now, Australia is known as being a country of freedom and liberty. So then I think for many Australians, it was a huge turning point, a big wake-up call.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning to you. Is the Starmer government trying to reverse Brexit?
Boris Johnson says yes, as he warns the UK is at risk of losing control.
Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
Fears over the Falklands as an emboldened Argentina take advantage of Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands surrender.
Brits told to flee Beirut as the government organises more emergency evacuation flights as Israel's offensive intensifies.
And it's James Bond Day today, believe it or not. An annual celebration of 007.
There's a little bit of rain around today across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for most, it's a fine day out there and generally the brighter day of the two this weekend. Join me later for a full forecast.
It's just on 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
We were talking about drinking before, reducing pint sizes in pubs. It's not going to happen.
To 2/3. Oh no, you're up in arms about it.
It's not going to happen, but it's some fancy report has said, oh, wouldn't this be a good idea to reduce people's levels of drinking? Well, of course it isn't. No, they're going to just... Smaller glasses doesn't mean you drink less. However...
The new fancy laptop just blanked.
It's the website that's gone wrong. Someone messaged in to say, I thought the younger generation were all renowned for not drinking and smoking and all that sort of thing.
A lot of them are teetotal?
There's a lot of... The people are drinking less. Maybe it's just the old guard who are still just drinking more and that's causing concern. I do think it's ridiculous, though. You've got to be able to... You know, you've got freedom of choice. If you want to... Smoking is bad for you. Yes, we know it. doesn't mean he should be stopped from doing it stood outside a pub.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to personal responsibility, does it not?
Yes, indeed.
People know how much they want to drink. I've just seen another view, which we won't be able to find now, essentially saying that holidays, all-inclusive holidays, need to be banned because it just promotes overindulgence. That's after that story in the papers this morning suggesting that in Spain, some resorts in Spain are going to limit British tourists to just 6 drinks a day.
Which
3 at lunchtime, 3 at dinner.
Yeah, which obviously is just going to mean no one's going to book. Why would you book it? You just
you just go elsewhere. Yeah, if you're paying all inclusive, and you usually do pay a premium to do so, you drink and eat what you like. You're on holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
I love how you suggested you thought it was 6 drinks an hour. That's hilarious.
Well, I just thought in an all-inclusive, it's what you do. You go to drink, don't you?
1 drink every 10 minutes.
I drink it every... pint every 10
That's
minutes.
a pace. That really is a pace.
Yeah, but...
I'd be on the floor after 15 minutes.
Not for the first time.
It's true.
Where were you the other day?
I don't know. Where was I?
Oh, you went to a big party thing, didn't you? And you went to someone's 30th birthday party.
Did I?
Yeah, which was
Glad to know where I was.
Which was an evening do.
Yeah.
And she rang me in the afternoon saying, "I've just got into bed. I'm drunk. I'm trying to sober up before tonight." And you did it all again.
Did I?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've actually got no memory of that. When was that? Last week?
Yeah, last Saturday.
Was it?
Yeah, you rang me in the afternoon and said, "I'm just going to bed. I'm drunk."
Oh, well. There you are. Got absolutely no memory of that.
Young people
thank
today.
you for sharing with the nation. I appreciate that. Anything else? Oh, no. Maureen says she loves my hair in an updo. And she says both of us look very smart. Thanks, Maureen. I'm off to a wedding. It's my friend's wedding today. So I thought 2 birds, 1 stone and get the hair ready, for the wedding.
Yeah. Oh, apparently, smaller glasses of beer was trialled in a Sheffield pub, says Fed Up. It got the thumbs down. I bet it did.
I bet it did. No, you're not happy about this one.
Actually, you can't even... You've got to call them half pints now. If you have a half, you used to call it a lady's glass, didn't you?
Oh.
Do you want that in a lady's glass?
Oh.
But now it's just... You can't say that
Don't think you'd be
anymore.
allowed to say that anymore. No.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Do keep views coming in. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Now, ahead of that memoir, which you've heard an awful lot about, Unleashed, I don't know when it comes out, but very soon.
10th of October.
Oh, there you go. What is it today? 5th. All right. Anyway, Boris Johnson has been speaking to Camilla Tominey to talk about his time in office and his views on politics.
Well, in the interview, he says it will be a disaster if Sir Keir Starmer tries to row back on Brexit. Let's take a listen.
I believe that we're great if we do things on our own. I think we're great I think that national independence is extremely important, and I think that point is proved beyond peradventure of a doubt in Unleashed.
Yes.
Because having secured full national independence, we were able to do things differently, such as the vaccine rollout, such as the AUKUS Pact, such as the taking a different stance from our European partners on Ukraine.
Do you think?
And I believe, and what worries me now is that the Starmer government is really determined to try to roll all this stuff back, and it will be a disaster. Unless we keep that proper control, we won't be able to do things like that again. So Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
What do you think Starmer and Reeves are trying to reverse Brexit?
So if we'd been a rules... This is the key point. Of course they are. Now, if we'd been a rules taker...
Yes.
At the end of 2020, 2021, we would not have been able to authorise AstraZeneca and Pfizer. No, but you keep interrupting this, because it's very, very important. And that was how, by March 2021, we had vaccinated 45% of the UK population.
The vaccine programme
compared to
will always
10%.
be part of your legacy.
Well, it's not just Brexit. The former Prime Minister also set to reveal aspects of his relationship with the late Queen.
Did you have a bit of a testy relationship with King Charles? Did you get on with the Queen and Prince Philip a bit better than...
No, I think... Look, I mean, what's certainly fair to say is that I used to see the Queen every week.
Yes. And
that was one of the great, great joys of the job, because it was kind of free psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And there was no confession so appalling she'd heard it all before, right?
Would you say she had her work cut out with you compared to other prime ministers?
I don't know. You'd have to. Well, I don't know. She was always. Look, she was. What I can say is she was always very supportive and kindly, and full of really good advice. And so she wouldn't. I sort of have a fair idea of what she thought about lots of things, but she wouldn't really reveal her hand much. But she would.
You
would nudge
indicate
you.
that she's a bit Brexity.
No, I wouldn't go into her political views, and that wouldn't be right.
Oh, I like the fact he's keeping that to himself.
Oh, he's very respectful, I think, of the late Queen.
Well, so he should be.
Yeah. He spoke about their last meeting together. I read a little excerpt in the Daily Mail this week, saying that she had a white smile that lit up the room. And even in that last meeting, just 2 days before her death, she was still smiling like that, lighting up the room. Thought that was quite nice.
Well, let's talk to former special advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and political commentator Andy Williams. Good to see you both. It's coming to the defence of the... Well, no, it's not. It's going on the attack of the government, the Labour government. I just think it's extraordinary, Charlie, that he's doing all this now. It's 4 months too late, isn't it? He could have had an impact on the election.
Well, he might have done. I mean, I know he wrote a couple of pieces. He wrote a scathing attack on Keir Starmer in the Daily Mail. Well, he didn't have a book to launch during the election campaign, so I think he must have been keeping his powder dry for these interviews. But look, he's obviously on the attack. There's a lot to go on.
He wanted Rishi to lose, didn't he? Let's be honest, he did.
Well, I don't know if
I think he did.
I think so.
There is, for whatever your views, I suppose, about whether you were Team Boris, whether you were Team Rishi, whether you were Team Truss, remember her? Briefly. I think at the end of the day, everybody still believed, even though, the Tories had lost the ear of the public. Of course, they weren't interested in listening to them, and why would they? Because
well, Boris Johnson...
taking place. But everybody kind of felt that a Labour government would be worse than a Conservative one, and that's coming home to roost.
Well, Boris Johnson said if he was still in charge, if he hadn't have been kicked out, he would have won the 2024 general election. And he did have the mandate in 2019. Do you think he's got a point?
I think he probably does, because I do think that's actually true, because I still think there would have been, even though he was rightly sort of hauled over the coals for the lockdown rules that were broken in Number 10, it was the way it was handled. I wouldn't necessarily go down the route that he's gone down, which is apologising for apologising and saying that was a mistake. I think he should have apologised right from the get-go to say, I have discovered, or it has been brought to my attention, that there were people that were breaking the rules in Number 10, and I've dealt with them. That's leadership and moving on, not turning up to the dispatch box 3 weeks running and saying, there were no parties, when actually it then transpired that there might have been.
Well, that's exactly the point. It's a moot point, isn't it, whether or not he would have won the 2024 election, because he was brought down by nobody other than himself, his lies and his incompetence. And I think that is the point about Boris Johnson, is that there's... sometimes people think that he is still hugely popular, and I just don't think that's the case. I sort of think he's a bit of a busted flush, really. I think his time as Prime Minister showed him up in a way, and the public... Of course, there'll always be people who love him, because he just breeds that kind of loyalty and whatever, and he's entertaining. But fundamentally, I think the majority of people think, no, we wouldn't like Boris back, actually.
Well,
and actually, Charlie, I mean, do you think it was...
Hold on a minute. Not many people, when you look at the polling, are very pleased we've got Starmer in.
No, I know, but I mean, he has just won a massive majority, a bigger majority than Boris Johnson won, by the way. But I was going to say, Charlie, do you think it'd be a good thing for the Conservative Party if Boris Johnson came back? Because I don't think it's in your interest, really, is it?
Not now. He's obviously had his time as the leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister. But I think back in the election, I mean, elections have a very good way of sort of focusing the public's mind. And yes, there's always polling, there's always, focus groups and all the rest of it. But when I think it came to the actual campaign, now it could have been a sort of a Hillary Clinton-style campaign where those, coming up to the presidential election, aren't we, next month? But, in 2016, Hillary had those FBI emails shackled around her neck, which, constantly came up. Now, Boris might have had the COVID shackle around his neck during that election campaign, but... people are very easy, I think, and able to, during a campaign, to look at someone that might have been putting forward an optimistic, happy-go-lucky vision to say that, look, COVID is in the past, mistakes were made, but, we've got to turbocharge the economy, we've still got to hang on to those Brexit freedoms under, Sir Keir, whatever his name is, snoozer army fest or whatever.
Crasharoonie snooze fest.
Whatever, exactly, the kind of words that Boris came out for Sir Keir. I think it would have actually made a huge difference. Rishi was just very unable to ask.
I do think Keir found him, I think Keir Starmer found him very difficult to deal with, actually. I do. Because it's just not his personality to be able to neutralise someone like that.
No, well, what is Keir's personality in all of this? Because he seems to... I mean, certainly on the Chagos Islands business, we've got someone who is Prime Minister with a huge majority, who is asked, and we'll play you the clip in a second, what does this mean for the sovereignty of other British sovereign territories? Yeah. He doesn't answer the question. If I was in Gibraltar or in the Falklands, I'd be worried sick listening to this. Here you go.
Argentina now saying they want the Falklands back. Can you guarantee that under Labour no other overseas territories of Britain will be signed away?
Look, the single most important thing was ensuring that we had a secure base, the joint US, in particular UK base. Hugely important to the US, hugely important to us. We've now secured that, and that is why you saw such warm words from the US yesterday.
I mean, why didn't he just say, yes, we can guarantee that?
Yeah, the only good answer to that question would have been yes.
Yes, next question.
Yes, next question. Very direct, shut it down. I don't know why he didn't. It may be that he is, he's not somebody who's steeped in foreign policy. I think he does rely a lot on his advisors, but nonetheless, it would have just been much better if he'd been really, really clear about that. And I think that's the big problem.
Clear or honest?
Well, I don't think he's being dishonest. I just think he's failing to answer questions as directly as maybe he should. And that's the problem. There's a lack of clarity in Labour's communication at the moment, and I do think that's a big problem.
But is there a lack of clarity in the Tory camp as well? Because Boris Johnson, speaking to Camilla Tominey, sounds absolutely furious about the Chagos Islands decision, but then we're hearing from Liz Truss's spokesperson yesterday saying that it was Boris Johnson who asked her to start negotiations. James Cleverly saying this is all lies and weak from the Labour government. Well, he was sat there in the negotiations himself when he was Foreign Secretary.
Well, I think there are negotiations to try and give up territory, and there might be conversations about whether you can repatriate people, so people that had to leave the islands when we first took them over, effectively, for them, and they are now able to move back, so that's part of their heritage. That might have been a conversation, but I think giving them up in totality is something altogether quite different. But the lack of clarity on the Labour side, it's not even a lack of clarity, it's just Sir Keir Starmer is not a politician. If it was Tony Blair would have been able, exactly, without any kind of advisors, to say no directly, because he's a politician as well as a lawyer. Sir Keir Starmer presented himself as someone that was obviously very dull, very boring, very different from the chaos of the past and the characters and the colourful characters that you might have had in Tory as part of Tory Prime Ministers, but he's different and he's going to do things differently, and he's going to get rid of the sleaze and the scandal, coming in from day one, accepting God knows however many freebies at whatever cost, whilst picking the pockets of poor pensioners in this country, all the while paying your union bosses' payroll.
Union bosses.
And telling us how terrible our economy is and what kind of black hole we've got, which is totally ludicrous, by the way.
Keir Starmer is not... Come on, Charlie.
Everyone else has said that that's not the case. This man...
Any chance?
He's a fraudster.
Any chance to... Yeah, take a breath, particularly in this room.
Well, he can take a break.
Keir Starmer's not... He's not somebody who's going to win the news cycle. He's not Tony Blair, but he's somebody who is...
But he's done a good job of winning the news cycle.
He's somebody who's serious, who's got a plan, and I think in a year's time... the wind fuel thing... The wind fuel thing, I think, is a problem in terms of it's been unpopular. I think it's the right decision. But if you look at everything... If you look at everything else...
Think it's the right decision?
Yeah, overall I do, actually. I think there are... Because I think there are ways in which you could have made the policy work a bit better. You could have looked at doing it by tax. But fundamentally, the wind fuel allowance is something that 80% of people in receipt of it did not need. According to Age UK, who were running...
use that winter fuel.
Yeah, but most of them, not all, but most didn't need...
people.
Some of them are not, and some of them are.
Are going to lose their...
Some of them aren't, and some of them...
That is a disgrace.
No, it's not. No, it's a disgrace that some of them will lose it, and that's where the government needs to step in and make.
Pensioners.
That's why.
It's 10 million pensioners.
But we don't need
not a small number of people.
8 million of those people didn't need that money. For some of those people, they're literally. For some of those people, it's pocket money. No, I'm sorry, it's absolutely true. It's not the case that 10 million people were relying on that £200 to go into that bank account. You're telling me that everybody over 65 in Britain needs that 200 quid? It's not the case.
When we see the stories of poor pensioners that had to make a tough choice between heating and eating and couldn't turn on their heating this winter because it was taken from them, they will end up in hospital. There will be a winter crisis.
And that's why it's important that the government makes sure the people at the margins...
That will be the record of this Labour government so far, and they should hang their head in shame.
I mean, I don't agree. I do think it's been unpopular, but I think in a year's time, everything else, the freebies, all of that nonsense. I was on a show on GB News last Saturday. Hold on.
His winter coats to some of those pensioners. He's got enough of them.
I was on Saturday 5 last Saturday night, and everyone was telling me, "Oh, Rosie Duffield, everybody, this is terminal for the Labour government." People have forgotten that already. People's memories are short about politics, and actually, fundamentally, all of this fluff, let's see what Labour actually do and deliver in a year's time.
You can't say you're taking away the winter fuel allowance from pensioners.
No, I said that was the exception. I said if you look at the freebie stuff, I honestly think it is not... I really do not think it's cut through.
The Prime Minister is so out of touch with reality and the public. You know, he won a big majority, but it was a very thin majority. He's got reform breathing down his neck because they came second in a number of constituencies. That's why it's vital, I think, for there to be a new Conservative leader to come and...
But we all know Reform are going to tear themselves apart in the next 5 years anyway, so they might not even exist in the next election.
Not as much as the Labour Party, if they keep going down this path.
Well, on that note, we've got to leave it, partly because our inbox is going to crash. Yeah, you can imagine what most of you are saying to that one, but they are being read. Can't go through them all. But thank you both very much indeed.
Yes, thank you. Good to see you both.
I'll tell you what, Andy, you're a brave man.
Well, I don't see these comments, so that's why I can't.
Probably for the best. We'll leave it at that, shall we?
At least he's prepared to come on here and say what he thinks. Don't have to agree with him, but, you know...
Yeah, all opinions welcome here.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the weather, shall we, with Alex Deakin.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all that pleasant with the rain, which will linger for most of the day over the Western Isles and rain on and off across the Northern Isles too. But for the mainland of Scotland, I suspect most places actually brightening up a touch by this afternoon. Some brighter spells developing across the east of Northern Ireland, but again here generally quite a lot of cloud through the day, and most of England and Wales staying fine once any morning mist and fog has gone. But here comes the rain into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire by this evening, and then spreading its way steadily northwards as we go through the night. Still much of central and eastern England, much of southern and eastern Scotland will stay dry through the night, but elsewhere the cloud thickening, outbreaks of rain and drizzle moving in, and the winds continuing to strengthen. That'll add up to a much milder night tonight compared to the night just gone across these eastern areas. Temperatures much higher and generally staying in double digits. On to Sunday, it does mean a drabber day tomorrow, much more cloud around in general. Some early brightness across the east, and it may brighten up later across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England, but only once we've seen this showery rain move through. That could be quite heavy actually in places and spreading up towards the Midlands and across Wales. Again, temperatures mostly in the mid to high teens, quite windy, but still feeling quite humid tomorrow as well.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
36.
Get on with it.
And that's what's available in the autumn cash boost. £36,000 in cash. Yes, I thought you said you could let me do this. The biggest cash prize of the year so far. £36,000. It could be yours. Here are all the details that you need. I'll get there.
Watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck.
Yeah, indeed. Now, still to come. Keir Starmer's surrender of the Chagos Islands has created fears we've been talking about that the Falklands might be next. We're going to talk about that in just a moment.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Earlier this week, Olympic swimmer Adam Peaty finally proposed to his girlfriend, because I've been waiting for this, the daughter of Gordon Ramsay, with a gorgeous yellow diamond ring.
Yeah, so the demand for coloured diamonds in the last 10 years has soared by, guess how much, 77% between 2010 and 2019. Joining us now to tell us more about some of the hottest trends in the diamond world is dealer to the stars, Neil Dutson. Good morning, Neil. Morning, Ben. And I've got one of your exemplary examples. Look at this bad boy.
So that's a very rare Muso Colombian emerald. And it's alpine green translucent, so it's a really stunning
See if
colour.
we get a close-up.
So, yeah, so pretty impressive.
Can I be very crude and ask how much this is worth?
So value is £200,000.
How much, sorry?
£200,000. Now, the reason is its rarity. It's minor oiling. It's very, very, very pretty. The two diamonds on the side are D-colour, flawless diamonds, just to accentuate the setting.
Neil, how did you get into diamonds?
I studied diamonds in Antwerp. So Antwerp used to be the diamond capital of the world, really. Yeah. 85% of the world's diamonds go through Antwerp, or used to. And now Dubai has taken over. And yeah, I just went to a school there. I learnt about diamonds, and I just didn't want to be seen off in the future.
Neil, I'm very concerned I'm going to drop 200 grand's worth of diamonds into my cup of tea, so can I give that back to you?
Absolutely.
But I can hold one if you like.
Oh, well, I've got
Neil.
a lovely one here.
Thank you.
So this is a fancy vivid yellow. It's 8 carats.
This is my dream ring, just so you know, for this hand. This would be
Is it big
amazing.
enough?
So what would I call this? A yellow?
So that's a natural fancy vivid yellow diamond. Value £300,000. So,
it
depends where you're buying it from.
If it's like a glove, Neil, maybe it's a sign it's meant to be mine.
It's definitely a sign, yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No, ladies first.
Thank you. Welcome back to breakfast. As the UK announces sovereignty of the Chagos Islands are going to be handed over to Mauritius, there are now questions about the future of the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar. But it's the Falkland Islands that we're talking about today. They've been raised, haven't they?
Yes, the Argentinian foreign minister, after Sir Keir's announcement, has promised concrete action to ensure the islands are given back to Buenos Aires.
Well, that's despite the UK government saying they have an unwavering commitment to the islands. Here's what the Prime Minister told GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster yesterday.
Argentina now saying they want the Falklands back. Can you guarantee that under Labour no other overseas territories of Britain will be signed away?
Look, the single most important thing was ensuring that we had a secure base, the joint US, in particular UK base. Hugely important to the US, hugely important to us. We've now secured that, and that is why you saw such warm words from the US yesterday.
Let's talk to the chairman of the Falkland Islands Chamber of Commerce, the Honourable Roger Spink, who joins us now. Very good to see you, Roger. I was saying earlier on the show, if I was living on the Falklands and I heard that response from the Prime Minister, it wouldn't give me a great deal of faith.
Good morning. Thank you very much. We do actually, we are reasonably comfortable at this moment. We have the right of self-determination written into our constitution. The support for our right to self-determination is included in the Labour Party manifesto. It also was included in the Conservative Party manifesto. Two of my colleagues have been to the party conferences just recently. We have received broad cross-party support for our right to self-determination. And also the islands have received a letter from the Minister actually confirming the British government's support for our rights to self-determination. So, it's not unexpected that Argentina would seek to exploit something like Chagos, but there's no read across. And I think in the islands, we are all very satisfied with the very strong support that we enjoy from the United Kingdom.
We've had an email in this morning saying that there needs to be another referendum in the Falkland Islands. Do you think there's an appetite for that at all? I mean, your last one was in 2013, I believe, and a huge majority voted to remain a British territory.
Yes, I think, we had one in 2013. I'm not sure that we wish to go to the... I think the result would be very, very similar if we had one tomorrow. It's a lot of effort to go to organise a referendum, but I think, the result in 2013 was pretty magnanimous, and I think there's no doubt in my mind that if we held one tomorrow, that we would achieve the same result. And but by the way, I'm actually chairman of the Legislative Assembly, not the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, right. Well, that's worth pointing out. Thank you for that. Look, the issue here, though, as you say, you're confident that the UK government, under whatever colour, isn't going to give up the Falkland Islands, and obviously self-determination means you all want to stay as you are. We understand that. But this has opened a doorway to Argentina, to ministers in Buenos Aires, to start rattling the sabre, more vigorously.
Well, I think Buenos Aires grasps at straws a lot of the time, and it's not unexpected, but certainly the very strong support that we've received from ministers, I think, does counter that, and we look forward to receiving further messages of support from the ministers. Certainly the statement from the Foreign Office and from the Governor were very strong statements about the sovereignty and the right to self-determination of the people of the Falklands.
So when you hear comments from the Argentinian Foreign Minister, Diana Mondino, talking about concrete action to ensure that the Falklands are handed to Buenos Aires, are you able just to dismiss that as rhetoric, or do you worry that this decision regarding the Chagos Islands has put wind in their sails?
I think it's rhetoric. We constantly have comments from Argentina about how they will try and recover the islands, or actually, no, from their point of view, they try and any sort of light that they see, they will leap on. But I think it's been made very, very clear by the British government, the current British government and former British governments, that the support for the islanders' right to self-determination is ironclad.
Roger Spink, I'm glad to know you have that confidence. That's hopefully reassuring for all the Falkland Islanders. We appreciate the fact it is, 5:31 there in the Falkland Islands, so thank you very much indeed for getting up early to talk to us.
And our colleagues in Gibraltar have very much the same view about their rights.
Oh, let's hope so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, the sun hasn't even come up in the Falkland Islands yet.
No. Not a place I've ever been. I wouldn't mind going.
You'd enjoy that, I think.
Would enjoy. I've got friends who went when they were serving and went out to the Falklands.
You should plan a trip. There's penguins as well.
It's a long way to go, though, isn't it? It's a long way away.
No, it's a long way, yeah. I think you should go. You'd like it.
Thank you. Well, maybe Roger will put us up.
Yeah, Roger, if you're listening. put in an invite?
Yes, right now, should we talk about armed forces? Motorcyclists of all ages are taking part today in this incredible pilgrimage, paying tribute to people who've served and sacrificed for their country. We'll give you all the details in a couple of minutes.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Please tell me that we're British. In our darkest hour, we can work around this. The beer will still be flowing at Christmas. Tell me, please.
Martin, without using bad language, there's no words to describe that this is another major blow to the hospitality sector. I wake up every day with anxiety thinking, what's going to happen to us now? Oh my God, now the weather's against us. Not only are the government absolutely battering us, then the weather's now hitting us as well.
Kate Stewart, this can only mean one thing. Prices, once again, going through the roof.
And there's nothing we can do. We have on costs. We have to buy from the brewery. We have the VAT. We have then the VAT, what we take. It is an absolute nightmare. To be in the pub game now, Martin, is very, very difficult. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just keeps hammering us from every different direction. And obviously, we have to pass that on to the customers, then price increases. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to sell beer at an inflated price. We want it as cheap as possible to get people through them doors. But we have no option. They're going to go up again in the new budget. You know, there's no help for us. What are we supposed to do, Martin, except the only option is to close the doors and say, enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. I absolutely cry my eyes out having to put the prices up because you think, oh, my God, people are just going to turn away and walk. But we can't swallow the costs all the time, Martin. It's impossible for us to do because we will go bankrupt. There has to be there's inflation getting hammered on us yet again, and we have to pass it on. I feel it when I take my children out for something to eat. You're like, wow, that has just cost a fortune. But what is the answer? The answer is the government needs to look at saving the hospitality sector and stop being so greedy in everything that they take away from us, or there won't be pubs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Camilla Tominey, this Sunday, when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
It's 9:36 now. Thousands of motorcyclists will come together at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire today for the annual Ride to the Wall, as they call it. It's a special event to honour and remember all those whose names are engraved on the Armed Forces Memorial.
Well, since 2008, motorcyclists of all ages have participated in this unique pilgrimage, paying tribute to those who have served and sacrificed for their country.
Well, let's head to the Memorial Arboretum and our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson. Morning, Jack.
Yeah, well, good morning to you. We've just had the first few motorcycles start to arrive this morning. As you mentioned, this has been going on for 16 years now. It's a pilgrimage that thousands of motorcyclists do every single year to pay service and pay tribute to many of those who they might have served with and whose name might well be on the Armed Forces Memorial Wall here at the Arboretum. special someone this morning. I want to introduce you to David Sheath, nicknamed Blue. Was a veteran in the Fusiliers, and his role this morning, as you'll see very shortly, is to salute every single motorcyclist that comes here today. And as we were hearing from Philippa Rawlinson, the director of the a quick chat to Blue. Why is this day so important for you?
It's a day, one day of the year from any serving soldier.
That connection's really poor. We'll try and get back to Jack a little bit later on. We don't want to, obviously, run with something where the sound quality isn't good enough, especially when it's as important as this, about raising money and paying our respects to those people who have given their lives for our country. It's such an important thing, and the National Memorial Arboretum, I don't think gets enough attention, actually. There's some incredible things there. Apart from the main wall, you've got all the different areas for different conflicts and different operations that took place, and indeed you've got the Shot at Dawn
Memorial
area, which has just been refurbished, actually in part thanks to you, and I know you, GB News viewers and listeners, gave a whole load of money to get that redone.
And a special mention there to Jack Carson, who has worked really hard on this, hasn't he, for the past year or so, to raise awareness, and also the amount of fundraising that's come from GB News viewers. Because it is so important that those that paid the ultimate sacrifice for this country are remembered and honoured in this way. Yes. And I think Jack Carson's worked so hard on that in the past year.
I do think what is nice about the Arboretum is that it is all people, you know, and sometimes we focus on particular conflicts, don't we? And it's the fact that this is everybody involved. You know, time is not an issue here, because for those people who've lost, whether it was 60, 70 years ago or whether it was last year, and someone in the armed services has died, it's they've got to be remembered. That having those names on that wall is hugely important, actually. Right, no, Jack, we can't go back to Jack. That line just isn't holding up at the moment. We'll blame the motorcyclists.
I think there was just a lot of noise, wasn't there? A lot of noise. So I'm sorry for that and those technical issues. We'll be back after this very short break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Michael Sheen talks about how he was wearing false teeth and wigs and whatever else to play this part. How's it gone down over that side of the pond?
I mean, I have to tell you, I absolutely loved it. I'm seeing everybody else there. They think it's a hoot, but Ben and Anne, it is very funny. And you walk away from it thinking that was great television. But is that appropriate when you think about the fact that it's associated with Jeffrey Epstein? You know, after it was over, I thought, I'm going to say good things about this. But the further I get away from it, the more I think, but what about these women that were violated by Jeffrey Epstein? When they turned on the television, were they laughing? Did they see the humor in it? Or are they horrified that it's become a joke?
The dialogue seemed very stilted and expositional, I thought. But then you think, well, that's clearly what they were trying to achieve. And it wasn't a documentary, it was a drama. And some bits were clearly made up.
Absolutely. I mean, when you watch the princesses crying, when you watch the princesses making decisions behind the scenes, it's very compelling television. And you have to remind yourself, similar to The Crown, that you are watching something based on a true story, but has been greatly exaggerated for entertainment value. And I initially thought, oh, this is horrible for Prince Andrew. And it is. But at the same time, I think that sometimes these pieces make the royal family a little bit more relevant. They introduce people, they introduce new people, and people are now watching them a little more closely. And I think it's a double-edged sword. It can be both things. It can be bad. It can be good for the royal family.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, more than 250 British nationals have now left Lebanon on flights chartered by the UK government. The Foreign Secretary is urging any remaining UK citizens who want to leave to register immediately.
Well, the UK has chartered a flight to leave Lebanon tomorrow in order to support its citizens looking to leave the country. Well, it's as a Hamas armed wing leader was reportedly killed in an Israeli strike in the north of Lebanon. That's according to Hamas media. Earlier, we were speaking to the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox.
Key point is access to the airport. I think that's going to get increasingly difficult in view of the latest bombing. And a lot of the bombing got quite close to the airport area because they still see that, the Israelis that is, as the stronghold of Hezbollah command. And they are still accusing both Hamas and Hezbollah of building their bunkers under residential blocks. And it's seen a lot of activity, and that will go on and will build to a crescendo over the weekend as we come to the anniversary of the 7th of October attacks by Hamas last year. So you could see why the Israelis are doing it the way they are. They're going to keep the world guessing, but above all, they want to keep the Iranians guessing. They want to disrupt them if they possibly can, because the attack earlier this week by 182 ballistic missiles was of a different order from the one we had on April the 13th, where it was between 250, all told about 300 missiles, drones and other things. But a lot of that was old stock. A lot of this was new stock. And I hasten to add that, by the way, if such an attack was launched on both the British base at Akrotiri, but heaven forfend that we ever saw such a thing in Europe, Britain seems to be completely unprepared to fend off this kind of attack now. Although Mr. Healey, the Defence Secretary, went to Cyprus for a photo op and said Britain took part in the operation against the attacks earlier this week by the ballistic missiles. It was very, very little that with the RAF Typhoons that they can do. What they want Britain to do is to really beef up the contribution to keeping the sea lanes open, because the Houthis, armed by Iran, of course, are using more sophisticated weapons and more sophisticated tactics, multiple attacks, including sea drones, commando attacks, and so forth. It is very, very complex. And I didn't answer your previous question. I'm going to do a Boris Johnson here, but I will answer it. And the choices are, broadly, does Israel strike at one of three ranges of targets? Military targets, launch sites for the missiles and aircraft, missiles particularly, if they can find them. Nuclear sites, of which 6 or 7 are unknown, but are known. Sorry, there are also unknown ones, and of the known ones, some are very, very deep dug into the earth, into mountains, are very difficult to get at. And finally, which Joe Biden was talking about yesterday, will they attack crucial oil ports or oil terminals?
Robert Fox there now. Get out your vodka martinis. Don't you dare stir them, though, because today is James Bond Day.
Yes, the annual celebration of the James Bond film franchise based on Ian Fleming's series of spy novels.
Well, the London premiere of the first Bond film, Dr. No, was 61 years ago.
Wow.
today, which is just quite something. Let's talk to AJ Chowdhury, who's a Bond movie expert. Good to see you this morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Global James Bond Day.
Well, indeed.
Golden, like Goldfinger.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite remarkable, actually. That, I mean, obviously, there's been the evolution in the films, but there's still that longevity there. They've tweaked, they've changed, but we still have a passion for it.
Absolutely. James Bond is a British cultural heirloom. From the Ian Fleming novels and the literary heritage to the movies still being produced by the family, the Broccoli family, Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. They're fantastic. They're global brand leaders. But also, at the end of the day, they employ lots of people in the film industry. They've kept the institutions in Britain alive and around the world. It's the best filmmakers around the world. Great actors, great stars, but constant renewal and giving us something different, yet something traditional.
Do you think... I always wonder if we've lost something. I personally don't think we have, because I really like the sort of gritty Daniel Craig stuff.
Whereas I don't.
No, you're not a fan. But the genre has changed from something that was slightly comedic, really, quite light and fun, to something a bit heavier. Is that a bad thing or a good thing?
Stephen, there's an old joke. How many Bond fans does it take to change a light bulb? One, but tend to complain how much better the original was. No one is ever satisfied. But, you know, there's renewal. Like, I'm sure people... I grew up with Timothy Dalton. He's my favourite Bond, the connoisseur's Bond. But also Roger Moore, Sean Connery.
Oh, so I'm a Roger Moore man.
George Lazenby, the one-off, is in the most critically acclaimed Bond film. And Daniel Craig has made the brand so commercially and critically acclaimed. So we're now all waiting on bated breath for the next James Bond.
Who do you think it could be? Who's your money on?
Nobody knows at the moment. Like I'm saying, they're replanning everything. They're building... It's like buying a plot of land and building the foundations, and people are speculating on what curtains should we have. It's far too early, I think, at the moment. You know, James Bond is being celebrated in London at the Burlington Arcade today, global James Bond today. We're quaffing Bollinger champagne, wearing fancy clothes and suits. But also, around the world, Bond is a huge icon and a huge sort of tourist industry sort of figure. So everyone's celebrating those sorts of things, and James Bond means a lot to lots of people around the world. But at the end of the day, you know what it is? It's just fun entertainment.
What do you make of... Obviously, we've got so much passion for the films. Has that detracted from the original books or not, do you think?
In some ways, it's a benefit. You know, I think the films are the tail that wagged the dog of Ian Fleming. But the Fleming books, Charlie Higson wrote a continuation Bond book. The Fleming books have just been reissued. You've got other people, Vasim Khan and Kim Sherwood, bringing sort of diversity in different aspects. I think that leads the way as the kind of the unplundered riches of the James Bond intellectual property. But also, at the end of the day, you can pick and choose. You can watch a film, you can watch The Man with the Golden Gun 1 minute, you can watch a serious, heavy Bond film, something light and entertaining, or read a book or a comic. It's such a huge, broad church.
You're the man to ask on this one, because I always get very confused. Was it Casino Royale? I can't remember now. But Sean Connery came back, didn't he, and made a Bond movie that wasn't officially sanctioned. It's all very bizarre.
Sean Connery came back a couple of times. He left after You Only Live Twice, then came back for Diamonds Are Forever, the highest salary ever paid in cinema. And then years later, I wouldn't say Never Again was the film. It was an iconic comment on him saying, I'll never play Bond again, of course, with enough money. He comes back. And there's a complex legal situation, but yes, he did. And then, of course, Sean Connery had a kind of love-hate relationship with James Bond. But unfortunately, that's how he's remembered. He was a great actor. He did a lot of things, but ultimately, he's known as James Bond. I think James Bond dominates the life. When Daniel Craig leaves us, he'll be known as James Bond. But, you know, it's best to be known for something good.
Yeah, well, it's such an incredible accolade, isn't it, for an actor to be James Bond? As you were saying, it's a British export, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we use the word icon all the time, but James Bond is an iconic character.
And we take it for granted. It's been carefully nurtured by the Fleming family and the Broccoli family. It's hard to keep a franchise running for 60 years plus. There won't be an Iron Man 25. There won't be a Batman 25.
That's so true.
There will be Bond... Well, we have had Bond 25. And I think Daniel Craig, you know, at the end of the day, when he's parachuting to the Olympics with the Queen, that tells you everything you need to know.
It does. Final thought, because as I say, everything changes through the Bond movies, apart from, up until quite recently, Desmond Llewellyn. Q. That was a remarkable thing, that the Bonds changed and Q was always the same.
I think Piers Brosnan called him the Merlin of the series, the gadget master.
Oh, okay.
James Bond, his most famously the Aston Martin DB5 with all those things. And that was Spy Octane at its best. And I think actually all these characters, Ben Whishaw now plays Q. We don't know who's going to carry on. But Bond, that's part of the kind of wonderful genius of its reinvention. You know, there's a series of Q novels coming out by Wasim Khan. So it's the gift that keeps giving on every aspect. Who knows? We'll get a Moneypenny Diaries book. We've got Kim Sherwood's book. There's so many bits of rich history in the James Bond tapestry.
Looking forward to whoever the new Bond is, I tell you.
Idris Elba is my vote.
That can be very good.
AJ, happy James Bond Day to you.
Happy James Bond Day to everyone.
Yeah, great to see you. Right, we have Saturday Morning Live coming up in just a moment, don't we?
Yes, Ben Leo and Tatiana Sanchez are here with us now. Morning, you two.
Good morning. I have to agree with you. Idris Elba for the next Bond for me.
Yeah, he's
What about
a
me?
good choice.
No.
Ask
You
the
need
audience.
someone attractive and, you know.
And smooth.
Not clunky and clumsy.
I'm not going to be nice to younger models. No, not a chance.
Who's your favourite Bond so far?
Daniel Craig.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think he's very good.
Oh, I didn't like how he was different and a bit grittier.
Pierce Brosnan.
That's what I
is
said.
my era. I love
Yep.
GoldenEye because I grew up playing the GoldenEye game on the Nintendo 64. I love Natalia, Trevorlan, the bungee jump at the start of GoldenEye.
The GoldenEye generation, they call it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at you two then in Bond. Oh, that's very good.
That is very good,
That's
you
been
two. Oh, Ben.
photoshopped a lot
I
better
think
than ours
Barbara
were.
Broccoli's watching, you know.
They could have chosen a better picture for you, Ben.
I look like I need a tan and a wash.
You do need a bit of a tan.
I love
Yeah.
how my face matches my body. That's great.
You look good.
That's great.
Well, there you go. It could be you two. Who knows?
Oh, it's you two.
Yeah,
That's-
there's
yes.
us two. As,
My
yeah.
face and my body do
Hang on a
not
minute.
match particularly
Why
well.
do you look good? Who's done dirty on me? What have I done?
No, you should have seen the first draft.
First
the
one was
first draft,
terrible.
Stephen was not happy at all. Anyway, what's coming up in the show? We should probably talk about some work.
We've got the latest on Israel. As 250 British evacuees have now left Beirut. Lots on Boris, clips to show you ahead of Camilla Tominey's exclusive tomorrow.
And is it Gary Lineker's last ever match of the day tonight? The BBC refused to confirm or deny, so we'll see, I guess, tonight and next week whether he says goodbye and so long.
Yeah.
And farewell.
Be interesting.
And farewell to you.
Thank you both very much indeed.
We'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you very much. We'll see you... Well, you'll see them tomorrow.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, today is the brighter day of the weekend. Most places dry, fine with some sunny spells, but a little bit of rain in some spots. Quite a grey, damp start through parts of central Scotland and staying pretty damp and drizzly on the west coast throughout the day. Rain and drizzle on and off too for Northern Ireland, but probably not much getting into Belfast. And for most of England and Wales, as I said, it's a fine day out there, dry and bright with some sunny spells. A little bit of mist and fog around this morning, but that should scoot away. A bit chilly first thing as well, but temperatures by this afternoon up into the mid or even high teens. Feeling a little cooler in the west, though, as the winds start to strengthen. And obviously not feeling all